There it is. Hi, I'm Mac McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. And today we got friends to lovers to breakup. Real story. Real story. If you want to add yourself to my Discord, the link's right here. If you want to go to writemac.com and send your story and get my take in a public YouTube video like this, or you want to talk on FaceTime or Skype live, fully unpack your breakup, let's do it. If you don't find it useful or helpful, I will refund you. Haven't had to refund someone yet, but if you said, hey, Mac, I didn't get much out of this, no problem. So, friends to lovers to breakup. A lot of times I've met guys that go, I can't be friends with a woman. Are you serious? Well, I think you can be friends with a woman. I think you can gain feelings after being friends. I think there's no rules to that stuff. If someone tells you you can never be friends with a woman and then like her or this or that, they're just claiming their own set of rules. Make your own rules in your own life. If you like having some lady friends or mates or buddies, a lot of the times, you can be friends with a woman that is a colleague. You have things in common, but you're just not that attracted to for some reason. Or you're dating so many other women that you look at this one and you go, you know what? I'd rather just keep her as a friend because we get along so well, and it's just not there. Someone go, oh, you can't do it. It's because you don't have very many if you don't have very many options, sometimes you'll get attached to the friend. Now, the worst part is when someone goes, oh, if I'm her friend, somehow eventually maybe she'll like me and she'll make a move on me and she'll ask me out and she'll tell me how much she loves me. That can happen.
But actually you're going to get welcome to the friend zone.
Most of the time, but it can happen. It can happen. The girl that's your friend can convey love to you and say she likes you, and that can happen. Here's the thing about the friends that you have a crush on or that you like and you don't know how to bring it up or you don't know how to take it there. There's a shelf life on it. There's a window that's going to close. So there's always these moments, and I've had guys tell me this before. Well, we did have this one moment, but I didn't go for the kiss, and she did say something to me that was provocative or kind of based on leading me to believe that she was interested, but I didn't do anything. See, those are the kind of things that door's not open forever. She will meet someone else that will make a move. And what I would say is if you're in that situation and it's a friend you're attracted to and you got feelings for it, go for it. Go for it. And if you get rejected or it doesn't work out or the timing's not right, it's just a discovery mission and you got some clarity. That's all. It's nothing personal. If you want to be friends from that moment on, that's a choice. That's fine. And then there's the friends with benefits, friends to lovers, where someone goes, I don't want to get into anything serious. And the other person goes, oh, yeah, that's fine with me. Until someone in the group, this is what's always interesting about relationships. It's never 100% equal exact feelings. The world's not fair. Newsflash. So people will be like, he did this, she did that, he did. Well, their feelings aren't as strong as yours are. Well, that's not love. No, it's if let's just say that on a scale of 1 to 100, you said how much you're attracted to someone, and you said 95, and you asked the other person, they probably would say 90 or 80. They probably wouldn't say the same number if they were saying it honestly or privately. If they were in front of your face, they might go, oh, yeah, 95 too, hun. My point is, someone can have stronger feelings than the other person. The person that has the stronger feelings is actually at a disadvantage. Think about that. It's kind of like if you think about the person that's the quote-unquote hard worker at work, the person that's really, like this person's really hardworking, and they work at McDonald's or they work at one of these places, they're still not the fucking manager. But they might be doing a lot more work than the manager. Yeah. They're sure the hell doing a lot more work than the owner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And Aleph knows. Aleph actually did some time at McDonald's. How long did you work at McDonald's?
Actually, it's about 9 months.
That's a life experience.
Yes.
That's impressive. That's hard work. And you had to wash your hair of the French fries.
Yeah.
It smells after, huh? I worked at not a McDonald's, but I worked at a kind of restaurant. It was a Hofbräu, and they served like turkey and mashed potatoes and different things. It was good. It was actually really good food. But I remember like you just smell your shirt afterwards, and it was like, ugh, it smells like fried food.
I don't feel bad anything with that.
Oh, you would just save it. You wouldn't even wash your shirt probably. You just go, oh, it smells like fries. I love McDonald's fries. But going back to that, if you think about it, it's the same way in a relationship. You're like, the person that cares less, when people break up or shit goes down, someone goes, God, they didn't even care, or they didn't even put in enough effort. Yeah, that's the way it goes sometimes. That's why you were attracted to them. That's why maybe they were able to move on faster or whatnot. But it's a lot of times the feelings are not equal. People don't really address that. They don't really address, and here's the other part of it. Tables can turn, where all of a sudden you're the one that cares more and they care less. That's happened to me in a relationship before. For 4 or 5 years, I was the one that cared less. That doesn't mean I didn't care. It just means that I cared less. In other words, you're not on bated breath. You're not. And then the tables turn, and you're the one going, where have you been? Why didn't you call me? What have you been up to? And you're like, how did this change so quick? It's not fair. Life's not fair, dude. Right?
That's how things start when I working at McDonald's too, with my worst one.
With your worst girlfriend, your McDonald's love affair.
Yeah.
They met in McDonald's.
Actually, I didn't met her at McDonald's. I met her at coffee club before, but after that we know each other.
But you fell in love while working at McDonald's.
No, just right after coffee club.
So you had an intermission, and then you started McDonald's together.
During that time when I get McDonald's, actually is what the time that I was trying to.
Oh, you worked at different McDonald's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
At that time, I trying to fade away.
That's right. You worked at a different McDonald's. Okay, gotcha. Man, that's a good life experience. Attachment style had a big impact on how people rationalize their situations and the story they tell themselves. Truth of love, what's your attachment style, if I may ask? And how much weight do you put on attachment styles? This is something maybe we talked about, or you mentioned, maybe you sent me a message about doing something together. This would be something that maybe I would like to pick your brain about, because I've read about it. I feel like it's a label I don't like to use because I feel like it pigeonholes people identity-wise, but I'm open to learning more about it and getting different perspectives. Truth of Love says, on a side note, I can't say I ever picked up a girl at McDonald's. Get your Big Mac on, eh? I think that working at places like McDonald's was a great life experience.
It is.
It's a great life experience. It's not a very prestigious job in America, right? Like, but to do it for 9 months or a year to see what it's like it's a busy job too. It's a busy job. So, I think any kind of service job where you got to get dirty and do those things, to do it for a little while and appreciate what people do in service jobs is good. Have I ever picked up a girl at McDonald's? No. But I did have another client that actually fell in love with a girl that worked at Burger King. I remember him telling him the story. He's like, "Oh man, she's just so cute." And he's going on and on. She always smiles at me and she's always friendly. And I'm like, well, I mean, people that work at those places, it's kind of their job too, right? It doesn't mean that you don't try. It doesn't mean that you don't ask for her number or go for it. But service jobs like that, people are naturally friendly. So he went for it, and she said she had a boyfriend. He was absolutely crushed. And I thought to myself, really? Like, why would you be crushed about that? You went for it. She rejected you. Yeah, she always smiles at you and stuff. But I'll tell you another random story about a Burger King love case, and I don't know how I got into this just to start off the live stream, but we're going to get into a story soon. I usually like a few more people on deck before I start the story. But I remember I used to work at a job that was next door to a Burger King. And so I used to go in this Burger King and get my my lunch or my break food. I don't really eat fast food anymore. But anyhow, and I think about 6 months after working there, a friend of mine had some girl he was dating. And so he brought her along. I forgot where we were going to dinner or something. He brought her along because me and him were really good friends. And I looked at her and she smiled and she smiled back. And I'm thinking to myself, where do I know you from? Do you know what I mean? Not no like, oh, you've hooked up before. But like, I know this girl and I know that smile. And she kind of giggled and she didn't speak really good English. She was Latin of some sort. I don't know if it was Mexican or Central America. And she kept smiling at me, and I'm like, God, like, where's that smile from? But I don't know her. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I don't know her name or anything, and she's kind of looking at me again like we know each other. It's kind of awkward. And then I go, oh shit, she works at Burger King next door. She takes my order all the time. But I didn't recognize without the uniform. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, does she work at Burger? He's like, how'd you know? I'm like, oh, well, I order my food from her usually when I'm on break. I couldn't figure it out, right? I'm sitting there like, why is she smiling at me? Truly Love said, throughout my life, I've gone through all the attachment styles. Right now, I'm secure. Well, that sounds like the best one. I like the idea that you are able to change attachment styles. That's one of the things I don't like. I feel like people tend to go, well, I'm this attachment style, even if it's a negative thing or a negative branding, that's just who I am. I can't change. That I don't think is good. The fact that you feel like you could change attachment styles, which I'm a big proponent of environment and what you do in your life, changing who you are a lot of times. So moving to new places, which truth of love, Mr. Clutch, I think you've moved quite a bit yourself or lived in different areas, and I think that seasons you in a different way. I just had a client recently that's in his mid-20s and still lives at home. And he was saying, I could get this job, but I'll be skint, which translation in the UK means poor, I guess, or not a lot of money. And I'm thinking, but you need to go out and get your own place and live on your own, even if just to get by, just to live on your own for a while. Because when you live with your parents or your grandparents or your relatives, it's kind of like having the life jacket on. You're never going to really learn how to swim. And the longer you do it, the more you'll just go, oh, I'll never move out. And it highly affects relationships. Am I correct, Clutch? I mean, you're doing breakup coaching now, or I'm not sure if you'd call it breakup coaching, but you deal with people. Some people in their 20s right now are like, they live at home. I get it. It's expensive, right? But you do need a finish line to move somewhere eventually out.
Don't get too comfortable.
Yeah, at least desire moving out. There's people that don't even desire moving out. They're like, oh, I'm comfortable at home, dude. I mean, I remember I was back in the Bay Area because the Bay Area is so expensive, the Silicon Valley. There was, I was at this, what I call like an alcoholics bar where every guy that gets off of work, Sal, Harry, John, Peter, Paul, all of them are at the bar. It's like 20 guys and one female bartender in a dark room. And one of my friends, oh, let's go down to this place. And I'm like, okay. And I went there and there's this guy there. He's in his 40s. By the way, I'm 40 now. But he's in his 40s and he lives with his parents in a very expensive community and area. And he's like, I love living with my parents. Oh, God, it's great. And I was just like, did you ever move out? Like, even though your parents have a nice house, and he was just doting over the waitress. I was just like, wow, man. Like, it's so important. And this is just from my own experience. Maybe, Clutch, you can back this up. But environment, changing your environment, just moving to a different part of town and moving into an apartment from a house that's 10 miles away, that has a different group of restaurants and it changes things. It's good for you. Yeah, definitely a big impact with environment. For me, it's mainly been relationships that have changed me. I do agree being on your own is key to finding balance. It really is. It really is. And part of the thing is the idea that when you move out for the first time that you're just going to make rent and it's going to be tough, that's part of the process. That's actually, you know, you could, I suppose in a lot of people's situation, you could always move back, but you eventually want to, you know, get a studio somewhere just for a year or 6 months, right? And look, now that the world's opened up with the internet, look abroad. I know COVID's affected everything for a lot of people, but change your environment. Change your environment for sure. All right, we got 4 on deck with 1 like. We're eking out a live stream right now with a limited audience. There's some seats still in the front row, folks, if you want to hop in, right? Friends to lovers to breakup, real story, unpacked. Here it comes. Are you ready? Dun dun. So, Derek D, always welcome. Baltimore's finest. Let's get this up. Let's get this up. And this individual that sent this in titled it, "She's Gone. What now?" I'm 25 and my ex is also 25. Wow, you don't really meet that many people that have the same exact age. We actually have the same birthday too.
Like your soulmate.
Well, yeah, I guess you could put that on there, huh? I don't know if that's a good thing. If you're into the stars and astrology, a lot of times they tell you, you know, if you're the same sign that you don't match up, right? I don't follow astrology closely, but, you know, I'm an Aquarius and they might say, oh, no, you could never be with another Aquarius, right?
I think it's like maybe some math equation like plus and plus. It could be together. It could not be together. Like
right. That. Yeah, too much in common. He says, I know it's not common. 2 Leos. Okay. Leos are kind of bullheaded and whatnot. So we met in law school about 18 months ago. It was our final year of law school. And where we go to school, it's very competitive. I've known law schools where they have only 100 students and they rank them 1 to 100. So they're literally fighting for position. So making true friends is hard, let alone a serious romantic partner. Says who? You? So making true friends is hard. But we broke those boundaries with passionate intimacy that was something I hadn't experienced most of my life. Well, good for you. Good for you, man. Passionate intimacy that was something I hadn't experienced for most of my life. That sounds like that could be like a drug. You know, like if you've never had passionate intimacy on the regular, that could probably take the competitiveness out of the law school being important. I never had a girlfriend till I was 21, and that only lasted 1 year of my life. I've noticed this a lot where people think they got started late because at 19, 20, 21, or 22, they had their first girlfriend or boyfriend. It's not uncommon in the world for that to happen. So I think that a lot of people see movies where there's high school sweethearts and things like that. Not everyone's fully developed or ends up with a boyfriend or girlfriend. And the funny thing about high school is years later, some of the people that didn't look good or seem like great catches in high school, 10 years later, they're stars. And so, you know, things change quite quickly from that realm of your life. And all paths lead to now. So it doesn't really matter if you didn't hook up with some, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I never had a girlfriend in high school. Who cares? They'd been seeing each other on the down low for months. Then I caught them kissing in our dorm room. Okay, I'm sorry. I missed the part here. I never had a girlfriend until I was 21 and only lasted 1 year. She left me for a dorm roommate. That's cold. They'd been seeing each other on the down low for months. Then I caught them kissing in our dorm room. It was bad. That sounds bad, especially if it was in your room. I just put my head down on women after that. Kind of went into a stud cocoon of sorts. I don't know what that means. Oh, maybe you meant study cocoon. I finished my degree 1 year early, did an internship where I met a chick I really liked, and she liked me, but just not as much as I liked her. Okay. It's hard to read that, but I get what you mean. Bottom line is, at least you put your head down and didn't, cry about it. You were like, I'm just going to take a break from women and finish and concentrate on school. That's actually being productive. Go for you. We hooked up a lot, but nothing compared to what me and my current ex did. We just couldn't keep our hands off each other for a full year. It went on like this. Well, that's the way it's supposed to be at your age in your early 20s. She was a nymph, and I was overdue. You know what a nymph is, Aleph? That's a good word for you to learn.
Nymph?
Yeah.
No.
It means a woman that likes sex a lot.
How to spell that?
NYMPH, I believe.
Oh.
He said, it was amazing. Then about 3 or 4 months ago, she started to go cold on me. Intimacy was once a week, and it wasn't good. It wasn't as good. Well, one thing that is interesting about someone that's in an immediate, passionate, highly intimate relationship, let's just put it that way, or a nymph, you're not the first one for her.
Yeah, that's true.
She didn't learn those tricks from you.
Probably you're not delicious for her. That's it.
But I shouldn't be laughing because it's one of those things that you probably think in the moment, wow, this is outstanding, this is great. That doesn't take anything away from it, by the way. The fact that you had a year of passionate intimacy and greatness in that field, that's outstanding. I'm glad you experienced that. If that's something that came on really quick and effortlessly, then it could leave really quick and effortlessly. I would ask you too, did you trust her? Like, did you feel like she was all in with you? Then about 3 or 4 months ago, she started to go cold on me. Intimacy was once a week, and it wasn't as good. We hung out, but she'd lose her patience with me all the time, even calling me an idiot more than once. That means she's starting to lose attraction. I asked her what was wrong. She said I was immature in relationships and that she just was going through a rough month as her mother was in the hospital off and on in a serious ailment. So that can highly affect intimacy if someone's parent or someone close to them is in the hospital. That's one of those things you can't really understand it. You could say, hey, do you need some help, or I'll be there for you, but you can't really feel what she's feeling, and you don't know the stress levels that she has on that. We pushed through. Then she had to move back home to help her mom out, so she thought she had to. I suggested she get a caregiver and finish school. Well, here's that would actually offend someone if they really cared about their parent, that you're suggesting a caregiver, the mom's in a serious condition, and you suggest, and you don't even realize you're doing this, but for selfish reasons because you want to keep your girlfriend around, hey, why don't you get a caregiver to take care of your mom? That would probably be better because school's more important. I probably didn't fly well with this. I moved back home to help her. I suggested she get a caregiver and finish school. This would make her mother proud and give her further strength. Says you, not her. Again, you're building a case, but really what you want is to keep your girlfriend in your proximity, which is understandable. She didn't agree and said, I don't understand as my parents are healthy and not in need of my help. This is probably true. We decided we'd try a long distance, but it only took 1 week, and she just blocked me. No explanation. No, I don't want to do this anymore. Just blocked me. Well, you're dealing with someone that is probably highly sensitive to the fact that anything that's said to combat her taking care of her mom is going to be taken a lot more serious than you realize. Then about a week after silence, she explained her mother was in the hospital again and it wasn't good. So there's your reason. Whether you like it or not, whether you think she should get a caregiver, you can't really feel that unless you're in that situation. I said, well, you're doing the best you can. She didn't like that and hung up on me and hasn't spoken to me since. To me, it just sounds like she's extremely frustrated. And I think the problem with her mom's deeper than you're realizing. And there's not something you can really do to fix it. So just back off. Just be neutral. Maybe send her a text and go, hey, you know what? I'm here for you if you want to talk. If you need anything from me, let me know, and just leave it alone. Also, I drive up there. I'm thinking, so she didn't like it and hung up. I'm thinking of sending her mother flowers, but I don't know the hospital.
You can't ask her.
Good question. I mean, number one, do you actually know the mom? Have you met her before? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you're just going to go, hey, this is Brad. I've been seeing your daughter with passionate intimacy for the last year. I just want to give you some flowers to make sure you're okay so she can come back and see me. No. What you want, if you know the mom, then send the flowers with no expectations of trying to win your girlfriend over. It's just a nice gesture. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know the mom, don't send flowers, because if the mom's really sick and then the girlfriend has to explain who you are, that won't go over big either. In fact, if you're going to send flowers, ask your girlfriend, hey, where's the hospital? I would like to send flowers, if you want to do that. It sounds like she might not be receptive to that. Also, I'd drive up there to support my ex, but I don't know where she lives exactly. Don't try to find out. Give her some time and space, and just like I said, send a text. Say, look, I know you're going through a tough time right now. I'm here for you. If you need anything from me, please let me know. I don't have an address. You don't want an address. This is not a time to surprise someone. Surprise, I just want to be here for you and your mom. No, it has to be requested. I feel abandoned and helpless. Well, that's a little bit selfish considering someone's about to lose their mom in the hospital. I feel abandoned and helpless. Well, right now, you feeling abandoned and helpless is gonna turn off your girlfriend a lot. And in some ways, if anything, best case scenario, you might get some pity or some guilt ridden from her. But it sounds like she's not even willing to do that. She sounds like a strong individual that's just like, you know what? Mom comes first, second, and third right now. She's in the hospital. Anything you do in my life that makes it remotely difficult, I'm just going to cut you off. I mean, if she wants my help or support, just tell me. I think she would have told you. Now I'm stuck on what to do next. I want her back. Don't focus on getting her back. Leave her alone. Let her take care of her mom. And if you want to send one text to just say you're available if she needs help, just leave it alone. If she really wants your help, she'll let you know. She'll let you know. I grew up in poverty. It does wonder and making you humble. Earning respect for yourself and others. Okay. A stud cocoon. Never heard of that. I think it was study cocoon, but he forgot the Y. This guy has almost zero sensory acuity. The caregiver line could backfire on him. What's up, Jenny Jen? Yeah, it's one of those things, especially when you're young. I think what he doesn't realize he's doing, and this is why it's really good he wrote out his story. He thinks he's being helpful, but he's actually trying to serve a purpose of keeping his girlfriend to live where they live, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you can get a caregiver for her, and we can send her flowers, and I can come see you. He's not listening to the fact that you have no idea what it's like, what she's going through right now. And some people, when it comes to things like that, they need to process it, and they just want to be alone. That's how people deal with family issues. Sometimes they just need to be alone. And the people from the outside are thinking, how can I help you? How can I help you? It's like, leave me alone for a little bit. I'll let you know when I need your help. They need to process it for a little bit. And I think that happens a lot. There's situations where from the outside, you feel like you can help your partner, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, husband, or wife with something. And then they push you away, and you're like, I could see this clearly. I can help you with it. If they don't want help, if they're not asking you for help, just back the fuck off.
Yeah.
Just back off. Just go, okay.
You're going to be annoying her.
Yeah, you're just going to be annoying, and it's not
attractive.
It's not attractive. Great. Fucking Al's picking up a lot on this damn show. Jeez, man.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, because he's been editing all my videos, man. This guy's becoming a fucking love genius. Jesus, he's taking the words out of my mouth. It's like, I was just about to say a dream. What? Man. But I mean, in your head, you think good intentions, right? Like, oh, well, we can get her a caregiver. I'll pay for it. Really? Translation, I'd really like you to stay with me because I don't want you to move away. Rob said, Aleph for the win. It's in the hole. As the great Bill Murray said in Caddyshack, it's in the hole. It's a Cinderella story. So, yeah, it gets to this point though. People really think, hey, I'm doing them a favor, right? It's like, are you really doing that just for you or just for them? A lot of people will build a case and shape and form something that actually is to their benefit too, right? But if you've never been in these situations, I think it comes down to that. It's like you're there for someone that's dealing with someone that's sick or in the hospital, but if you haven't dealt with it in a similar situation, you don't know. So you do the best you can, you're supportive, but you don't want to make any statements that are like, oh, you're doing this wrong or you should do this. You really got to tread lightly on what you suggest when someone's got a relative or family member that's sick, and gauge how receptive they are to your opinion. You know, if they're asking for your opinion, that's fine. You saying, you know, something like, well, you could just send a caregiver over there for your mom. No, that didn't go over big. If she has the slightest idea it was for his benefit, it will hurt him more than anything. I don't think this guy knows that he's pushing an agenda that's for his benefit. I think that subconsciously he's thinking, oh, this will be good for your mom too, right? Like, and your mom will be proud of you that you finished school. He's got a good point. Like, maybe the mom would be proud of her to finish school, and maybe the mom doesn't want her to make a big fuss about being in the hospital. But you know what? On the flip side, what if something serious happens to the mom? I don't like to say what the worst case scenario, and she didn't go there, right? Then you suggested she didn't. Now you're attached to that. Thing is, though, Rob says he's clueless. Well, he's young. He's 25. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. It's all. It's funny. Someone that's 40, 50, 60. We could be clueless. It just depends on the topic, right? No one's a genius at everything. And when it comes to sick relatives or family members, you know, not everyone's, you know, versed in that. He just doesn't know how social dynamics work, I suppose. That's why it's good to send your story in to writemac.com and get my take on it, or to unpack it in a live coaching session. Yes, that sounds like a plug in a commercial because it really is, but if you listen, you need to get a perspective. Not talking to your friend, not talking to a friend, not talking to your colleague and giving them a little side thing like, oh, my girl. So this is how this would go usually. This is how it would go. You talk to your friend or your colleague, you're like, hey, man, I don't know what to do. My girlfriend's, she wants to leave because her mom's in the hospital. She really needs to finish law school, though. She's one of the top people in the class, and I think her mom would be really unhappy. I think means I don't know. I think it would make her mom really happy that she stayed here and finished school, and I can't believe she's thinking this. And the friend who just wants to go out and get a beer with his buddy and watch a ball game goes, yeah, you're right, man. She's tripping. And then you think like, oh, yeah, man, I'm right. Send it in to me and get a different take. Actually have someone listen and care about what they're saying, right? It's like, do you get that conversation from a buddy or colleague? It's like, yeah, man, I agree. I've had guys talk to me before in live coaching sessions, and they're like, yeah, my friend told me, yeah, she's crazy. She's nuts. Of course he did. Of course he did. He's not going to be objective. He's just going to give, you know, a lot of times it's kind of like, yeah, let's go get a beer, man. And then there's some friends that would be like, oh, wait a minute, I've been here before. Let me talk about this a little bit. true experience is everything. He means well, but he's misguided on what love is. More than likely, he grew up around parents that didn't enforce boundaries, so he's trying to force affection and connection. Very possible. Or there's extremely good intimacy, and he's 25 years old, and he's never been in a situation where he's had that kind of intimacy, and it's like a drug for him. I just said this earlier at a live coaching before this live stream, and it never fails when someone's, especially men, it could be women though sometimes, because I help both. It never fails when someone had a quote unquote toxic relationship, which sometimes I don't even like to use that term because it's so broad, it can mean so many things. Let's get into specifics, what was toxic. But they're chasing, you're like, this is like, what are you going after this woman for? Or what are you going after this guy for? And then you get to the part where they talk about intimacy and attraction, and their intimacy and attraction is like, through the roof. They're blinded not by love, they're blinded by lust, by intimacy. And the amount of live coaching sessions we get into where we're talking for an hour and a half, and that finally bubbles out. You get to a point where you're like, God, she did this, she did that, he did this, she did that, he did this, she did that, and you're just like building this case, like, why are you chasing this person? Yeah, I know, but listen. You get into it and you get to a point, you say, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your attraction and intimacy? Oh, it's a 10. I've never been with someone like this before. That's what you're chasing. And that's okay. That's okay. Just realize what it is, and you just never had a piece of pie like that before. That's what it is. In your head, you're like, oh my goodness, I could never go back. Right? This is what happens, and someone's like, no, you don't understand how good it was. A part of the relationship, you just got to always realize everything comes with a little sacrifice, a little give and take. How much are you going to give up? Coach Mac McCarthy, when I told you about my girlfriend and my best friend, it killed all my self-esteem. That's a lot of self-esteem. What do you want to do now? All paths lead to now, Damien Castillo. Do you want to do a call-in right now? I can do that with you, Damien. Mm-hmm. I got the time. It's Sunday, 12 noon. I had a workout this morning. I had 2 coffees. I'm juiced. Do you want to do it, Damien? Did we talk before? I don't think so. I would remember a name like Damien. We got 13 on deck, 5 likes. We can do a call-in via Skype. He means well, but he's misguided on what love is. More than likely, he grew up a boundary. Yeah. Well, truth of love, may I ask you this? In your experience, wisdom, and knowledge, don't you think that people define love differently? And can there be one definition of love? Deep question. Do we go to the Webster's Dictionary and go, that's what love is?
No.
Can you do me a favor, Alec? Can you look up on your phone the meaning of love in the dictionary? I don't think I've ever looked this up, actually.
I did, but in Thai.
In Thai, it means something with the heart, right?
It's not mean like heart. It's mean like you share something for each other, but without you expect to get something back.
Oh, that would be unconditional love.
Yeah, that what love mean in Thai.
You share something together and you don't expect something to get back. That's the definition of love in Thai?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Is that funny, Rob? That's funny, actually. I've said this before. Thanks, Cordell. If you want to call in, like I said, I got the juice today. I got the Hugo. But it's interesting, right? Because people all think like, oh, I know what love is. It's kind of one of those things that someone shapes on their own. Mm-hmm. But I would say, I've talked about this before, Letting Go by, I believe it's David Hawkins. He says the highest feeling or emotion a human being can have is unconditional love. And to me, unconditional love is different than love. It's different. And I think that's why a lot of people love their pets so much. Think about that, right? Like your dog or your cat. You got a good fucking dog, man. That dog loves you unconditionally.
Yeah.
That dog's not like, hey, man, you look like shit today.
No.
Hey, you know, you didn't take the trash out. Hey, you know, like the dog, you know what I mean? The dog might bark or do something to you to get a bone or something like that, but it's not out of, you know, it's not blaming you or anything like that. Unconditional love is for your kids. I hope so. I hope you have unconditional love for your kids and your parents. Mm-hmm. But I would say that some people out there, for various reasons, don't have unconditional love for their parents, and they might have a case. For spouses, there will be conditions. You know what? That sounds harsh, but I think you're right, Azam. I think people don't want to admit that. Someone wrote on Instagram recently, part of being married is having zero expectations. I was like, what? Well, one of my expectations if I got married was for you not to cheat. Well, I have zero expectations of you, hun. That's how we got through so much. Sounds like you're a doormat, dude.
So I found the meaning of love by the Cambridge Dictionary. So the first meaning is to like another adult very much and be romantically and sexually attracted to them, or to have strong feeling of liking a friend or a person in your family. Another meaning of that is to like something very much, like I love chocolate.
That we forget that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you think about Eduardo Martinez, how are you, my friend? How's it going with the new catch? I think last time you were saying that you were dating someone, if I'm correct. Anyhow, I'm sorry, if I marry you, I have very high expectations of you. Otherwise, you can't be my wife. That's not an easy title to associate with you. And this is what's so interesting about meeting so many different people and talking to different people around the world with breakups and different things and living in a community with people from all over, right? Uh-huh. Everyone thinks they got everything. Everyone thinks they got the rule book, you know? Hey, you can't do that, man. You can't do that with women. Can't talk that way. Says who? You? Uh-huh. That's that. You know, it's like, I've said this before, like Instagram recently. I just taken it up. Every once in a while I go on there and I make a comment. Oh, you don't know this person the way it's like, who says who? You? You're speaking for humanity? This is a big problem right now. Yeah. People just think like, oh, my opinion is 100% correct and you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot for believing that. Genius. The truth of love, which actually the truth of love should know the real meaning of love, right, Mr. Clutch? Love is the exchange of energy, different upbringings, different interpretations, but the underlying motive is always biological. Even someone who's counter-dependent is pushed to connect. That's deep. You're an academic, dude. Are you a PhD, Clutch? That's academic right there. I mean, I have to unpack that a little bit. Love is the exchange of energy. Okay, I'm with that. Different upbringings, different interpretations. I'm with that. I concur. But the underlying motive is always biological. What do you mean by that, Mr. Clutch? Even someone who's counter-dependent is pushed to connect. So when you say even if someone's counter-dependent is pushed to connect, meaning that even if someone isn't open to love or connection, they're still pushed to do it. But the underlying motive is always biological. Unpack that little wee statement there. I'm sorry if I'm married, so Eduardo, hey. Yeah, Mac, things are going great. We've been bonding so well, both in person and over the phone. When we see each other, thanks for asking. That's great, man. That's good, man. That's the way it should be going. The beginning should be great. And you should be bonding right now and just having a good time. You know what's funny is once you get out of the honeymoon phase, and I don't care who, I've heard a few people over the last couple of years, oh, it's not a honeymoon phase. They're in year 1 or year 2, like in year 1 or year 1.5, and they're like, oh, we're just so great together. We're, like everything's peaches and cream, rose petals and wine glasses, right? And then you're like, oh, it's a honeymoon. No, I don't think it's a honeymoon phase this time, Mac. I think it'll last forever this way. You know what? It's possible. Good for you. If it was going to be that way. And I've thought, so this person told me this, right? This is a person I really respect, has a lot going for himself, does really well, actually has a really big time YouTube channel. And smart guy. So when he first said it to me, I kind of, the negativity little lurch goes in and goes, yeah, right, man. But I don't know his girlfriend. I haven't witnessed how they are with each other. But I'm like, you know what? Everyone's got a honeymoon phase. This is, if you go into anthropology, I believe her name's Helen Fisher. She's studied apes and all this other stuff. And I think she wrote, I want to say The Sexual Contract or something like that. She said it's absolutely 18 months to 2 years. There's studies on this. There's different things about this. Like after 2 years, things kind of change. That being said, is it possible to be head over heels for each other for 20, 25 years? Absolutely. 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 Excuse me. Hope that didn't come through the mic. But are the odds against you? Yeah, probably. But how would you end up elongating? This would be a very good topic video. Elongating or making your marriage or partnership last in the honeymoon phase. I have some ideas about this that might be counterintuitive, because what people do is actually the opposite. They move in together. They get good jobs. Well, at least in Western culture, maybe this is very American or something. Maybe I'm coming from. They get a good job. They get a car. They get a house. Then they start talking about kids. It's kind of like a staircase up to where, this is what we do next. This is what we do next. All the while losing intimacy, right? But really, what got you going, what made the relationship spicy and hot, was not living together, seeing each other 3 times a week, 4 times a week seems like a sweet spot. Having your own lives. I think one thing that people overlook, and the obvious thing is, I think Clutch, you mentioned it before, you want to end up with someone with secure, high self-esteem, had good parents. It does it because had a good childhood, because that's going to bleed over into the relationship. Very underrated is not to have a job that you make a lot of money, just to have a job where you're significant and proud and privileged. Like that you're proud and privileged of what you do.
Yeah.
And I would add, people overlook, myself included, when you start a relationship, she kind of drinks a lot, right? You don't think like maybe 5 years down the road, if she goes from 3 nights a week to getting hammered to 5 nights a week, this could be a problem. Or if we live together, it might be worse. You kind of overlook that stuff that later on becomes a problem, and then you go, yeah, I kind of didn't like it, but I just thought to myself, I'll deal with it. Those are the things long-term that get old. So anything that irks you kind of in the beginning and you kind of put it to the side and go, you know what, don't worry about it. It's going to bubble up later on. But what I would say, Eduardo, ride the wave. There's nothing better, and Aleph asked me this recently in a live stream a while back. So what do you think, single or being with someone? What did I say, Aleph? Is it better to have someone or be single? What did I say?
You said that you said both things. Like for being with someone, it's gonna be happy for the honeymoon phase, but after that, it's gonna be like the real taste of that.
I said, just give me the first 2 years.
Yeah, on honeymoon phase, right?
Just give me the first 2 years. And someone's like, oh, that's a bad way to look at it. I'm just being honest. But I do believe after you gain some wisdom and you had a few relationships and you know what you're looking for and you're looking in the right places, a lot of times what people do is they settle, just like you settle for a job that maybe has good pay but you hate. Or you settle for a job that you like the hours but the pay's low. You don't look for that sweet spot. And I think we do the same thing with partners sometimes, myself included in the past. Myself included. What's up, Jen? How you doing? Hey, Coach, up in the mountains this weekend, but glad to catch you live. Lake Tahoe, possibly? Biological, it's to encourage survival and replication. Ah, okay. There you go. I get that clear and crystal. God, biomechanics to which we are all enslaved. A relationship add to your happiness and not be the source, but love adds depth to your life. I say it depends mostly on the guy. What, love? I think you have to be consciously aware of what to do to prolong the so-called honeymoon phase. Most have no clue how to sustain it. Well, I remember the great G Money that used to come on here quite a bit, who's taking a break, I guess. He's like, well, you always have to date which is a common thing. You always have to date your girlfriend, and your girlfriend maybe always has to date you. And here's the crazy thing, though. You could follow a textbook. You always have to date her, and it could still go wrong. She could still meet a guy at work. Mm-hmm. Folks, I've had clients before that they're cheating, and their partner has no clue. They have no clue. And so you could do and they love their partner. They're like, I love my husband or this or that, but this just happened at work, right? Someone's like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. It's very human. It happens. It's not morally correct to a lot of people, but biologically, I think that might be more of what it's related to, Mr. Clutch. I think you have to be consciously aware of what to do to prolong. The girl plays a role, but it's mostly the guy. They say you see the reasons for your breakup before entering the relationship. I agree. Yeah, I think you probably see some things. If it's 5, 6, 7 years, people change sometimes, Azam. So sometimes people do change. I've had a relationship where someone changed who they were identity-wise based on job, and it absolutely affected the relationship. The qualities or values of that individual changed, and it was surprising. There's merit in saying that attachment is learned, but love is integral. So you can have someone who's likes being alone most of the time, but still wants to connect with others. Oh, I got you. Mac, we can talk about the honeymoon phase when we collab. Most conflict couples is that they exit the honeymoon phase at different times, usually based on attachment and past history. It depends mostly on the guy to sustain happiness and honeymoon. Yeah, I'd say the same. They have a clue, but it's easier not to face most of the time. Laugh out loud. Trying to trigger everyone, Mac? You're going to sperm war your audience. I don't even know what that means, sperm war your audience.
Sperm war your audience?
I've never heard that before. I don't know if I want that explained. I don't know. I don't think I'm trying to trigger everyone, but if you want to talk about it right now, like I said, I got the juice. You want me to call you on Skype, but it's late in Chile, isn't it? What time is it right now?
12:17.
53 minutes. I only got about an hour left in my voice, probably. Sperm Wars is a book. Oh, is it? I've never heard of it. What a great title. I don't know if I want to play that game. It's like someone says, hey, you want to have a sperm war? Get the fuck away from me, dude. Get the fuck out of here. I don't even want to know what that means.
It's like you use American English, but your friend use British English when your friend asking for a lotion, like, can I have a cream? Can I have your cream like that?
Oh God, I didn't. You're going way too far on that.
It's like what?
Sperm wars. I think more often than not, people don't actively look to cheat. It's more likely that they just happen to meet someone when they are not happy and attraction is high. There's a variety of circumstances, but that would be one, Jen. I agree. That would be one. What I mean, workplaces. What you don't realize is when people are working 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, I think, and you live together, you kind of don't get people's best till maybe Saturday or Sunday, even if they're in a good mood.
Mm-hmm.
I won't have my positive voice. Is that a good thing? Yeah, we'll put you on Skype. Let's set this up. I think, Aleph, can you go down to my car?
Mm-hmm.
And I have the outlet in the stereo.
Yeah. What was that again?
You know the outlet that we have to put into the computer to call someone?
Oh, you mean the up slide, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking for that. That's why I didn't.
Yeah, it's in the car. If it's not in the stereo, then it's on the floor there. But it should be there. We'll set this up. Don't make it work. Alf's great people. Talk a little honeymoon phase, huh? Honeymoon phase is an interesting topic. Interesting topic. Rob's been on deck, 13 on deck, Jen. A little bit of the usual suspects here, huh? Wardo, Cordell. Damien didn't want to do the call-in. Sometimes you don't want to make it public. $2 a.m. You're a night owl, man. I don't ever stay up till 2 a.m. I mean, that's late for me. And the weather's the best here when it's 2 a.m. actually. You're reaching me up tonight, Mac. I've missed being here for your live streams. It's been a while, Jen, I know. I've been trying to reassess some things. I'm thinking about maybe starting another channel, maybe something different. But I won't abandon this. I gotta figure out this algorithm. I've got too many people letting me know that there's something wrong with your views. There's something wrong with the content I'm providing is what it is. Weather is best here. It's raining. Yeah, you told me in Saudi Arabia it's special when it rains, right? You told me that before. Because it doesn't rain often in the desert, right? I'm slowly adjusting to California time. I'm moving back in a couple of months. I will have to stop coaching soon. Oh, really? Damien says, no, I don't want to do that. No problem, bud. You don't want to call in? No worries. So, where are you going to move? Santa Monica again? Can you have more than one honeymoon phase? Say you date for years, break up, get back together. Could you have another one? Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that I've definitely probably had more than one. I would actually say, though, that just because the honeymoon phase was the best part doesn't mean that my relationship after the honeymoon phase was bad. It just wasn't as exciting. It just wasn't, as fresh and great, and that's what I mean. Azam, you're allowed to give your 2 cents anytime. I'm not sensitive to it. I've had other people tell me I got to put more time and effort into the quality. I agree with you, bud. So that I don't mind your 2 cents. It's noted. I'm working towards that. I love your content. Thanks, Jenny Jen. Where are you at in the world? What do you mean I'm not that type of guy? Orange County, long story short, my other career is picking up now. So back to reality. Plan to keep posting content, though. I want to help others. Good, man. Ohio, Youngstown, Canton, Cincinnati. USA, I know that. Rekindle the honeymoon is best. What rekindles a honeymoon is probably a breakup. Orange County, I've actually had a large group of clients from there recently. Orange County. Don't know it very well. Yeah, that's right. You lived in Indiana, Zom. Near Youngstown. That's good knowledge, huh, Jenny? Youngstown is where the... Is that where it goes? Or is it... We're getting this set up, Clutch. You okay with Skype? That's what I use. It seems to come in the best from where I'm at. Cali is a key market for relationship problems. We can talk about that. I think I get, I wouldn't say it's the majority, but I get a lot of people from California or that lived in California before because everyone's moving, right? Is that hooked in?
Yeah, is this? Try to open something on your...
I'll just open Skype. Do you want to give your name on Skype, Mr. Clutch? Or do you want to just go... No, Damien, no problem, bro. If you don't want to if you don't want to talk about it online, I respect that. No worries, bud. It's just a choice. Discord. The Truth of Love. I'm in San Diego. I lived in San Diego for 4 years, Crystal. I think I remember you saying that before. I love San Diego. I don't have, this is going to surprise you. I don't have Discord on the computer I'm using right now. So I'd have to pick up something else. Can we use Skype? Do you have a Skype account, Mr. Clutch? I see rich multiple options. What could possibly go wrong? In regards to what? San Diego is OP? What's that mean? I lived in PB and Mission Beach, which Mission Beach is kind of runs into Pacific Beach. It's funny, when I lived in Mission Beach a long time ago, this is when you feel older, 18 years ago, there was actually apartments that were cheap. Now it's really... Coach Mac McCarthy is the ID. Should come up. I think it should just come up as Coach Mac McCarthy. I just talked to someone today. Yep, Coach Mac McCarthy. Actually, not one word. It's spaced. OP is a gaming term meaning overpowered or too cool. Did you know this for gaming? OP?
Yeah, but I didn't know that he gonna pick up in this line. I mean, in this.
Oh,
this
you
chat.
didn't think Azam was cool enough to know what OP was?
No, I don't think like that. But I don't think that he gonna use it in the chat. So OP is me like that.
It is a game. Okay, so
Yes.
I wouldn't even know. I'm ignorant to that shit.
For anime, it's like that character is like have a lot of power, like Superman. Yeah, that overpower.
I'm just amazed how many people play games as often as they do for how many hours. Like the client I just had yesterday at 25, he's like, I play like 7 hours a day for a particular game. And I was just like, really? I was really surprised, man.
Yeah.
Really surprised. 7 hours, jeez.
I'm not surprised.
Azam said, thanks, I'm offended.
Yeah, it's working now.
All right, here we go. Dun, dun. All right, we're dialed in. We can go audio only. I think it'll come in. Yep.
Here, let me just mute you here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you crystal clear. You're on deck.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah, I never thought I'd be taking a call at 2 a.m., but it's always something new, right?
Well, I appreciate it. I'm special.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, sure, you're special. Yeah, that's what I tell all the ladies.
So let's talk about the honeymoon phase. Let's unpack this a little bit, maybe. So what's your take on it? What do you think it is? A year to 2 years, or where do you go with it?
Depends on the attachment style. So
okay.
The aspect of attachment, without going too deep into the rabbit hole, because it could easily turn into a 3 to 4 hour topic. The way that we grow up, specifically with our relationship with our caregivers, has a very deep impact in the type of relationships that we tend to be attracted to later on. So if we want to really get into the nitty and gritty, when we were cavemen, depending on where we were geographically, there were certain advantages and disadvantages. So if I lived in, let's say, during the Ice Age, being isolated and going out and hunting and essentially being secluded had some benefits to it, rather than being a large community, because the more mouths you have to feed, the less likely you are to survive.
Sure.
Versus if you, let's say, grew up in a society like Mesopotamia, which is the foundation of civilization, where it was abundant farmland, abundant food, there were certain benefits to being in a larger community. And that's sort of spread into our culture, specifically in our relationships with our caregivers, because people that are secure tend to be more associated to that large community, while all the people that tend to be avoidant or dismissive tend to be more attuned to that Ice Age mentality.
I've never heard of it said this way before. This is interesting, the way you're explaining it, because I've read about it before, but not in this particular light. So go ahead, continue. I'm interested.
Yeah, so basically when it comes to relationships, depending on whether your parents were dismissive, secure, avoidant, fearful, whatever have you, you're going to relate differently to the people that you connect with. And 3 types of people you tend to get attracted to whenever you enter a relationship. The first is the type of relationship that seems familiar. So oftentimes if you grew up with an avoidant dad, or, God forbid, an abusive dad, guess what you're going to be attracted to later on? You're going to be attracted to an abusive or an avoidant person. The second aspect has to do with people that represent parts of ourselves that we have yet to develop, which is why you often have 2 attachment styles that are contradictory, liking each other. This is how we get avoidance dating, anxious, preoccupied, and so on and so forth. And then the third type is whenever you have a mixture of the first 2, which in my opinion is probably the most toxic and the most potent. So what you have is people that will tell each other that they love each other within 3 weeks of dating one another, and the relationship progresses really, really quickly. The problem is that depending on your attachment, you aren't so keen on opening up your emotions, especially if you're someone like an avoidant, for example, who has grown up around a parent who, let's say, didn't reinforce the value of being cared for, the value of being loved. And any kind of emotional vulnerability is a trigger. It's a fear-based response. So my immediate reaction to someone saying, I love you, is get the hell away from me. I want nothing to do with you. And what will happen with contradictory attachment styles, let's say if you're with someone who's anxious versus someone who's fearful, the person that's anxious is very keen on building that connection. So they'll enter the honeymoon phase right away. And the person that's fearful is a little bit hesitant, like maybe it takes a couple of weeks to a couple of months for them to really open up, but they'll also enter the honeymoon phase. But they'll also be quicker to exit out of it. And then you get into things like the power struggle phase, which is usually the next phase that follows in relationships. So a person that's fearful or a person that's dismissive might be in a mindset where they're just wanting to gain their independence, while someone who's anxious is really keen on keeping that honeymoon phase alive. And this is where a lot of those conflicts come from.
Okay, so first of all, that was a lot of information. That was good. I haven't heard it laid out that way before, because when I read about attachment styles, one thing that threw me off, and you're actually incorporating the way you're talking about it, is I felt like I'm not one of those. I feel like I could be multiple of those. But I felt like the way I read it, it was, and some people that come to me in breakups will go, well, they never say I'm a mix. They usually say I'm one. And, but what I would say, let me ask your opinion on this, since you seem very well versed in this. Would you say that different experiences, just like a traumatic moment in the past that maybe a trigger later on, would spark different attachment styles in an individual?
Attachment styles can be generated with one of two experiences, in my opinion, and depending on who you read, there's different interpretations of it. But going back to what you were saying, attachment styles are a range. So you can have someone who's, let's say, 50% fearful, 50% or 20% avoidant, and 30% secure. There's all different mindsets that we find ourselves in depending on the circumstances. But most importantly, the people that we surround ourselves with, specifically when we date someone who's an opposite extreme of ourselves, it gets incredibly easy to trigger something. So a person can be only 20% anxious, but if they're around the wrong kind of person or there's a lot of conflict there, what will happen is that person gets excessively triggered and becomes more and more anxious. And this is how attachment styles change based on environment, which is why it's so important to have instilled boundaries, to have a sense of self-dependence, but also have interconnection in relationships, because you don't want to go the opposite extreme where, a lot of these like red pill, black pill people go, where they say relationships are temporary and they're completely biological. And, it's only a matter of time before someone abandons you.
They're projecting their relationship.
Exactly. And that's the aspect that we want to avoid. We don't want to get into that mindset of the sperm war that you laughed at. Sperm Wars was a book that was released, I believe, in the 90s that talked about the aspect of what the biological consequences are of modern day society. So like one of the things that it talked about was, why is it that men and women climax more when they don't have consistent sex for long periods of time when they've had consistent sex for short periods of time? So let's say you're having sex with someone every day and then you won't see them for a month and then you have sex with them again and it becomes like really intense orgasm.
Okay.
And they looked into this. And the reason that this happens, and this is where people get triggered, is that men produce more sperm when they haven't seen their female counterpart in a long time. The reason that this happens is because women tend to cheat. and men's biological systems, knowing fully well that the women, historically speaking, throughout our history, do have that tendency, produce more sperm, which causes more of a climax to happen during sex. So there's all these biological, I guess you could say, reinforcements that are instilled in us to survive and replicate, but to also build an emotional bond. And again, this goes back to the whole attachment and what kind of upbringing you have. It's important to have an understanding of where your limitations are. Like, no one's perfect. So it's important for us to not only be humble, but to also be empathetic. Like, just because I'm dating someone who's, let's say, an avoidant who, 90% of the time drives me insane, doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person. But it does mean that we have different interpretations. And because human beings are so stubborn in their emotions and the way they feel, and, men tend to be logical, women tend to be emotional in their rationality, it causes all kinds of problems. But in the end, as long as, there is somewhat of a level of communication and a promotion on both sides to make it work, you can make it work. But it takes that consistency.
Do you think it's a problem when someone's reads up on this? What I like about what you're saying is that you believe, because I'm a big proponent of environment being underrated by some people by how much it affects you if you're in a new environment, and you're saying that the environment can definitely change the attachment style. Is that correct?
In fact, it does change the attachment style.
Okay.
In my case, it's changed it like 4 times. So when I, just to give you a quick summary of my upbringing without going too deep down the rabbit hole, I grew up in a narcissistic household. So
meaning both parents were narcissistic? I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that what you mean?
One parent was narcissistic.
Okay.
But the other was more of a codependent.
Okay.
And in those specific cases, I grew up with an understanding of what it was like to feel love. And one of the things was I thought that true affection didn't exist. Like, I would watch TV shows, and like on those TV shows or those sitcoms where the mom and dad tell the kids that they love each other, and there's high levels of affection,
and growing pains or something.
Exactly. I grew up thinking that was fake. Like, that was my mentality. And it wasn't until I got to my first year of university where I was in residence, and I'll never forget this. I had a roommate named Cal, and his parents are hugging him. They're like, "We love you, son. We're going to miss you so much." And I'm looking at this. I'm like, "Oh, this shit actually exists. Like, this is an actual thing." And of course, for the first, I would say, into my early 20s, the first half of that aspect was me being borderline fearful. It was just me not having a good understanding of what my attachment was and how I related to the world. And slowly through my experiences, I went from fearful to dismissive to anxious to back to dismissive. And now in the last year or so, I've settled on secure. But it took a long journey of experience and reflection and self-education to get there. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth it.
That's deep. Yeah, I believe that the fact that I like the idea, because when I read, I like your idea of the fact that it can change. I'm just wondering, with everything on the internet and so many videos on this and stuff, I just find that just like if someone gets a scratch on their arm and it changes the color, and they go on there and they go, "Oh my God, I think I need to get a tetanus shot," or like you try to be a doctor through the internet. It's the same thing almost with someone will go, "Okay, I'm a secure attachment style, and you're an ancient avoidant," to their partner. But then when they identify their partner that way, are they pigeonholing their partner in a way that anytime something goes wrong, they go, "Oh yeah, you're an avoidant attachment." That's where it becomes negative, right?
Well, like my last relationship prior to this one, I dated an avoidant, and I would like to consider that when her and I were dating, at least initially, I came off as really secure, and I was secure. But over time, just based on our interactions and the hot and cold behavior, you can't be around that for extended periods of time and not have some kind of element of impact on your psyche.
Oh yeah,
no one is susceptible to that.
Yeah, I agree.
And I found myself incredibly anxious. Like, my most popular video, and I hate to even mention it because it cringes me so much, is a video where I talk about avoidance and love. And at the end of the video, I give a speech where I become really emotional. Like, I start crying because that breakup was so fresh, and I knew that this was going to be the only moment in my adult life where I could actually categorize and catalog what it was like to go through a breakup where it was so intense. So I purposely put some things up where I talked about it. But the element is that I came out of that relationship incredibly anxious, much more so than usual. And a lot of that has to do with the communication I had with this person that I dated. Now, do I think she's a malicious person? No, I don't think she's malicious. But there was definitely an element where, depending on what your attachment is, you're going to be much more resistant to change. So the things that I've noticed in my coaching practices, and I'm not sure if it's the same with you,
sure,
is with avoidance, they don't tend to become self-aware until their early 40s. And it's only because what tends to happen is because they put so much emotional distance between the people that they interact with, that what actually happens is, how we all go through a mourning period, regardless of whether you're the dumper or the dumpy in a relationship. Because avoidants have been so conditioned to suppress their emotions, what actually happens is they actually don't feel the grieving process until about 6 months to a year later. And there's been so much time that's been passed since the breakup that they don't see that connect. So what will happen is an avoidant might approach me and say, "I suffer from seasonal depression." And I'll be like, "Okay, well, why don't you tell me about that?" And they'll say, "Well, I dated my boyfriend last year, and for some reason last year I didn't have this depression, but now I do have this depression." And then we start talking about the relationship. And then as we start digging deeper into it, the waterworks start coming out, and they start realizing, "Oh, wow, this is an actual trigger." but they've been so conditioned to suppress those emotions because the household they grew up in either didn't support emotions, or maybe they didn't have the right upbringing, or maybe they've been dealt a traumatic experience. The result is, in order for them to be self-aware, they usually have to find themselves in isolation. And avoidance in particular tend to be incredibly superficial for this reason, because they recognize that although they aren't prone to the emotional connection, they definitely want to build some kind of connection. And the only way they can build that kind of connection is one that doesn't emotionally trigger them, which is, of course, that superficial aspect. So they will usually go to the gym obsessively. They will work obsessively. Very, very high ambition levels, I will say. But then they get into their 40s and they realize, oh, wow, I've done all this. I've built my career. I'm sexually active. I'm physically attractive. But that's now slowly starting to go away, and I have no friends. And I don't know why. So
this is an extreme version of what you're saying. Like, this would be someone that's like 100%er.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
right?
Somewhere in the 90%er. Exactly. But most people, like, I would say the most keen people that are likely to change tend to be the anxious attachment, because they tend to recognize what their emotions are bringing out.
When you said that you ended your relationship and you felt really anxious, can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that? Because I know the word anxious, but I mean, in what way?
I would say probably unloved, isolated, abandoned is a big word. Like, my element is that because I've grown up in a narcissistic household, a lot of the reinforcements I've had to develop, externally. So I don't have an immediate relationship with my family, at least my immediate nuclear family. With my extended family, I love them to death. But my nuclear family, like, I have 3 sisters. I haven't spoken to them in several years. Mom and dad, I haven't spoken to them in several years. And the result of that is just based on the abuse that partake growing up. Now, the problem is that when you're in a relationship with someone who's dismissive, who's giving you a lot of hot and cold behavior, you're triggering that. You're triggering that experience over and over and over. And it's not to say that I haven't, gone to therapy and talked about it. It's been done, and it's continuing to be done. But the element is that when you're constantly around that reminder, it's going to be a deep and traumatic experience. So when I was going through that breakup, it wasn't that I was experiencing the loss of that particular person. It was that I was experiencing an entire lifetime of neglect and
you're saying
abandonment.
You're saying it brings back to the surface stuff that you maybe buried away for a bit, and it comes back up, right? So it's a culmination.
Exactly.
It's a culmination of similar experiences. Is that accurate?
Culmination of similar experiences, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the more intense the experience.
Yeah, it's kind of. So when did you start diving into? Since you're a poli-sci major, when did you start getting really deep into this? Is it after? Because I mean, you're definitely well versed and well read. So when did you start really kind of diving into stuff like this? Because obviously you've read quite a bit on the avoidant attachment styles and whatnot, but what triggered you to get into this?
Well, the attachment styles I had read on previous occasions, but they didn't really hit at home until this past year. But like for most of my adolescence, like I would say throughout my 20s, I had a really big issue with anger management.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know why at the time. But I later came to realize, both through therapy and self-education, that a lot of that anger came from resentment of not having a proper upbringing, not having proper love at home or proper reinforcement. In fact, most of my interactions at home were usually a form of criticism or a form of abuse. Not to toot my own horn, I don't like playing the victim, but I'm going to put it out there and say this is what I
didn't know. I didn't think you presented it in that way, but I know what you mean, because there's so many people that do that, right? It's like, well, this and this.
Exactly.
Right.
Like, and I see people like in the comments talking about CPTSD. Yeah, exactly. Complex post-traumatic stress. And I slowly, as thanks indirectly to the result of me being engaged to a covert narcissist, where all this stuff came to the surface, and I literally had a breakdown and forced myself to get therapy after many, many years of neglect. It all started to make sense. And slowly, I started building some courage in myself and understanding myself, and most importantly, to forgive myself for a lot of the neglect I was dealt. And this is where a lot of the people I help tend to be stuck on, because a lot of these people that I personally coach, and I don't know what the case is with your audience, but the people I coach tend to come from broken families. And because there's such an emphasis on a red flag, like, oh, he doesn't talk to his parents, that means there's something wrong with him. Well, not necessarily. Like, I've told my exes in the past, well, grow up in a toxic relationship with your folks and see what kind of relationship you have with them after 20 or 30 years. It's a hard pill to swallow. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that people don't realize when you interact with enough people, not just breakups, right? If you interact, like, I've been a teacher for years. I've had a lot of different jobs. I've lived in different places, just meeting a wide range of people, but now doing coaching for a few years and meeting a lot of people on a deeper level. What's interesting about talking to someone that you've never met before for an hour or 2 hours, I don't want to say you just get close, but you get deep really quick, right? Like when you're talking to these people. But you know what I've realized is everyone's so unique in their interpretations. And what you don't realize, what I've come to realize, is that, like, let's just say you meet someone that's just an asshole, right? Let's not even use the word narcissist. Let's just go old school, asshole, right? You know what I mean? It's like, this guy's a fucking asshole. You know what I mean? Like, whatever, or a jerk. But when you get deeper, you're like, this person wasn't born that way. Or they probably don't even know. Sometimes they don't even know they're doing it, and there were some ingredients thrown in there, life experience wise, that made them this way. And you also don't know what they went through to be this way, and that's where you get like, shit, man. Like when I talk to people, until you get really deep, you don't know why people do what they do, and you just assume, what an idiot, what an asshole, what a jerk. But when you look back at maybe the way they were raised or a life experience, I mean, I know, to be candid, I never had a deep depression before or something like that. And that's a very common thing now, right? I mean, it's a battle for a lot of people out there. And so sometimes it's hard for me to understand how people aren't coming out of it. But then when you talk to them about their experiences and why they're there, it becomes much more clear. But from the surface, someone just hears, oh, someone's being depressed again, or being a victim, or this or that. And then you get into it, and, all paths lead to now. And then you get deeper, and you're just like, wow, everyone's so intricate based on their experiences. It's just like, if you think parents count, right? I was just talking to a coaching client about this. Parenting counts a lot. But your life experiences outside, like let's say you had great parents, Clutch, and everything went right, and it was, like the kid that you went to college with and all that stuff. You could still be 15 years old and some kid down the street introduced you to crack cocaine. It's possible. It's like, yes. It's possible that you could have good parents make wrong moves based on environment, friends, and those things. And so it's like all the experiences culminate. They really do into someone becoming who they are. And I wonder, if you think about someone, is it their fault who they are, or is it just a reality of them just going through life without ever getting self-reflection or possibly therapy or having a moment to catch their breath and look at things? Obviously, you've done that. Like, because it takes an honest self-assessment, and that's what I think a breakup does for someone. It's like, if you're at ground zero, it's a really good time to look at yourself and just go, okay, what do I want to do? Right?
Definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. Like, reflecting on my avoiding years, which were in my late 20s, like, I went through probably about 2 or 3 years of depression, like severe depression. Yeah.
Was that triggered? I'm sorry to interrupt. Was that triggered by a specific event?
I wouldn't say it was triggered by a specific event, but it was definitely due to a set of circumstances. So what I would often do in my social settings is, slowly and surely, being the avoidant I would just slowly start pushing people away. And initially it wasn't a problem because I was a very social guy in university. Like, I was a late bloomer when it comes to the social dynamics of things. But eventually my resources ran dry. And when you're kind of caught in isolation and you're only left to your reflection, like I mentioned, even a counter-dependent wants to connect with other people. It's a instinct human characteristic to want to connect with other people. It will cause severe depression, to be isolated and alone. And it wasn't until, I met my ex-fiance and I was slowly pulling myself out of that depression when I met her, which kind of made me vulnerable to her spell, so to speak. But there was another element there, and the element was that self-reflection of realizing, wow, I need help, came internally. It wasn't something that I would ever accept externally. People came to me and told me, look, you need to go out and seek therapy. You need to get yourself better. But I wasn't ready to listen, and that's the key practice. If a person's not ready to accept the help or to listen, for that matter, they're not going to listen. And this industry especially, you have to be incredibly vigilant on the people that you help, specifically on live streams, because I run my live streams once a month, and there are a lot of people there that I see time and time again who just want to vent. They don't want to actually get better. And of course you sit there and you say, well, what are you going to do about it? And like, there's a term I use a term on my Discord called spiraling. Okay. There's another coach who will remain nameless who also has a Discord that's probably about 3 or 4 times the size of mine. And his comment is, well, we just get people to talk about their problems. That would be fine if we were dealing with a group of therapists dealing with people in crisis. But you take 6 people in crisis who are all obsessing over their exes and have them talk about their exes, guess what's going to happen? It's going to spiral. It's going to get out of control, and no one's going to do anything. So
it's like feeding the mob, huh?
Exactly. So what I usually tell people is, look, you're allowed to complain, but you have to come up with a solution. It's not enough to tell me I'm depressed. Well, what are you going to do about it? Well, I've done everything. What have you done? Oh, well, I've read books. I'm like, have you taken medication? Well, no, I don't believe in medication. I'm like, You said you tried everything. Like, there's an element here where you have to be open to a solution. I'm not saying that the solution to everything is to take a pill, but if you haven't gone that far, and if you haven't even tried it before you've dismissed it, my question to you is, are you actually serious about getting better?
That's a good point. It's one of the things I do that I don't have on my website, but I'll do with clients after I've coached and I've known them a little bit. So if they come back and they want to talk, because I'm sure this happens with you too, that maybe someone breaks up and they come to you initially for something and it works out. You have a good rapport, and you talk down the road, and they maybe talk to you about some other things. So sometimes they're like, Mac, you should tell people that you don't just do breakups, you help with other things. I'm like, I don't like putting on their life coach. I think it's too broad. I don't want to wear that many hats, and I want to pick a zone that I specialize in. But if we go into other things and I have a good rapport with you and I have good intentions and I want to help you, that's great. And you open up, it's great. But I don't want to go, I can help you, master your business, and I can help you do all these other things. I don't want to get into all those things, but the people that I talk to a lot of times, sometimes they're just not asking the right questions, right? You're just stuck on, they did this to me. I call it like whistleblowing. Look what they did. Look what they did. Look what they did. And, with everything's going on in the world, I'm not a big news person. You probably are if you're a poli-sci major and stuff. You're probably in the thick of this stuff. But but I mean, living abroad for somebody, I try to stay clear of it. The last year I got sucked in a bit, but the amount of people that go, this person did this person did this, and I don't know the answer, but they need, wait. You don't know the answer though, right? You don't, right? It's like one of the greatest things I ever came across this last year is there was this group, and there was a mixed bag, because where I live, there's a mixed bag of different people that live here that are retired, people that work here, so different areas of the world. And this one guy was from a prominent job, this and that and the other, and they're arguing over Biden and Trump. So I just say, hey, wait a minute. I said, wait a minute, what would you do if you were president? Oh God, why would you ask me that? I'm like, well, wait a minute, what would you do? Well, I would improve the economy. I would get more jobs. And I'm like, that's exactly what every president says, right? It was, and I don't want to, and it was funny because a couple of these people, like, they were prominent people. They weren't just random, they had prominent careers and stuff. And the things that they were saying were generalizations. similar to what, any candidate would say. And I was just like, you haven't really asked yourself what you would do. You're just going around saying what's wrong. And I think the same thing happens in a breakup or when we're in a bad place. We're like, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. And you're like, all right, so what do you want to let go of? What do you want to move forward with? That was one of the turning points for me is I went to a hypnotherapist, and she does something called emotional freedom technique. And she did that with me, and she went, what do you want to let go of? And I said, wait a minute. I want to talk about this shit more. Like, I want to complain more. It caught me off guard because I was going around going, oh, look what happened to me. Oh, work's shitty. Like, it was a spiral, like you said. And then she caught me off guard by going, now what do you want to let go of? And I'm like, I didn't even think that way. I've never even thought that way. She put together like an EFT mantra and a hypnotherapy thing. It really helped me. I do it with clients now. And it's what I say to it is, even if you don't agree with it, don't you want to try something different? Don't you want to try like a solution or an alternative? And I think that's what people get stuck in. And if you get another person, this is the other part, right? If you get a group of friends this is one of the worst things. You're in a breakup and your friend got done wrong 2 years ago, and they're like, oh, join me at the bottom. Like, oh, all men are shit. They're all cheats. They're all this. You know what I mean? And they're happy that you fell off. They're like, oh yeah, let's enjoy this together. It's one of those things where like it can get really deep after that for a while, So
there's something to be said about reinforcement bias, because what a lot of people will come to my coaching, they'll say, oh, my ex broke up with me because of her mom or her sister or her friends had a negative influence. And what I usually tell people is, look, if they wanted to break up with you, they would have found a reason to, one way or another. Like it would, regardless of like external influences. Like, don't get me wrong, there are some extremes of like abusive, string pulling in the background. But for the most part, people seek out information or seek out reinforcement rather than critical arguments. So if I want to break up with you, I'm not only going to rationalize or only remember your negative traits, I'm going to seek out people that agree with my assessment of you. Well, that's going to reinforce my bias.
I call it building a case. They build a case.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Like someone will be like, and then she told me I didn't pay the cable bill and I didn't do this, and I'm like, that's not why she broke up with you. She's just building you know what I mean? It's not that you were late on a payment for the cable bill or this or that. I didn't think so. I thought that I was like just building a case of reasons that they're going to break up. And like you just said, a lot of times if the breakup doesn't happen now, it's going to happen in a month or two. I've told people that if it didn't happen now, it was going to happen in 6 months. It was going to happen in 3 months because this wasn't going to continue. But it's an interesting question going back to your things with the way you're raised and your family. I heard Tony Robbins was being interviewed by Tim Ferriss on Tim Ferriss. You know who Tim Ferriss is?
I have no idea what Tim Ferriss is. I know Tony Robbins.
He wrote the 4 Hour Work Week.
I read his book on the 4 Hour Workout, I think it's called, or something like that. Yeah.
He's a good author. He's got a really good podcast. So anyways, and he's had it for years. He just interviews individuals that are famous, basically. But anyways, Tony Robbins is on there, and Tony Robbins will just take over the fucking podcast, dude. He puts everyone in his frame. Every time I've ever seen him interviewed, it's like he just turns it around. He starts interviewing the other person. So Tim Ferriss is asking different questions, this and that, and Tim Ferriss is a fan of Tony Robbins and all this. So Tony Robbins is like, let me ask you one of the most interesting questions, Tim. And this is one of the ones I bring up with a lot of people. And he goes, what did you have to do to get your father or mother's affection and attention? And Tim Ferriss is like, like I didn't want to go there right now, It's like he literally this is a really Tim Ferriss is a confident guy, well spoken. He was like, well, my dad was a tough guy, And then he you could tell it was a trigger. And then when he talked about his mom, he was like, well, my mom encouraged me to experiment, do science projects, and he's a big one on experimenting. But I always think that's an interesting question. Like, what did you have to do to get your father or mother's attention? Do you ever think about that as a question, like when you're talking about, because it sounds like with your own battle with realizing that your household was narcissistic. What did that look like for you?
Well, for the most part, like growing up, it wasn't like it was constant barrages of abuse. But what it was lacking support and lacking reinforcement. Like I didn't feel safe at home. So I would come home, and I had three sisters who are older, who are Latin. You can imagine, the amount of teasing that took place. But my parents divorced when I was very young as well. So I was in a household full of women who were a dominant force in that household. Not to say that a household run by women is going to be automatically a tyranny, but in that particular situation, given the head was a covert narc. It was terrible. It was a case where the only time I got noticed was when I was out of line. So, of course, growing up, when I had my anger management problem that I had mentioned earlier, that's the reason it was there. So you'd
get attention for being out of line, meaning like just misbehaving or something like that, or is that what you mean?
Emotional outbursts, emotional tantrums. Like things they would never pay attention to me. If I essentially came up to them and said, I have a problem, it wouldn't get paid attention to until it was a crisis.
And so when your parents got divorced, you lived with the three sisters and your mom?
I actually lived with one sister. My mom, my two other sisters actually moved to Latin America with my father for a bit. But there was at one point that, I lived with the three of them and my mom. And, oh man, the amount of feminine energy in that household. Like, I don't know if you've ever been with Latin women. But
my first girlfriend yelling. Was Puerto Rican, so but that was only a year. I was only 20. But it's kind of funny because my dad used to always go, Latin women, they got, you got to watch out. You got to be careful. They got a lot of energy. The way they fight and stuff. I remember him telling me that when I was young, and I was like, okay, Dad. But going back to, I had a client though one time before that was he was like your classic nice guy. He was really nice, too nice with women. He actually married a woman that was like 15 years older than him. People hear this and are like, what? Does that even happen? Yeah, like she was like 36, he was 21, she had a kid, and it was like his first love, this, that, and the other. And we got deeper because he actually divorced her, but it was hard on him, and he was following these relationships where he was just a doormat, just too nice, just over the top, too nice. This isn't about picking up women. This is about just finding situations where he would, just be placating to everything. And then when we got deeper about, the way he was raised and stuff, he said when he was young, he said when he was in fourth grade, he got straight A's. And his dad was like, yeah, well, like that didn't even please his dad. Like nothing pleased his dad. His dad was always in a rotten mood and always kind of just putting him down. And then his parents got divorced, and he said, I think he had two sisters, not three, and they would always go, "You're just like Dad." So he wouldn't want to act like a, you know what I mean? He'd always want to give in and be softer. So he got stuck in this in between, and when we discovered that, when we got into it, and we did some different stuff, and I talked to him, probably over 10 hours of coaching and stuff like that, he never realized that was one of his problems.
A lot of the things with trauma in particular, like one of the fallacies I've heard is that I've heard people say, well, some people don't have trauma. Bullshit. Everyone has trauma. There's different severities of trauma. Just because you grew up in a loving household doesn't mean that you didn't experience in some form of your childhood a form of abandonment. Let's say, your parents forgot to pick you up from daycare one day, or there was a time that you were crying in your crib and no one came to you. Like, these have deep psychological impacts. I'm not saying...
Only if it's... And you're saying even if it wasn't a habit, it was just one time. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, because...
Like, in other words, it's not like the parents did it repeatedly. They might have just slipped up and you don't realize how much that affects.
Well, that's a good point, because a lot of people feel guilty talking about their trauma, because what they believe I'm trying to say is this is your parents' fault, that they were malicious in doing this. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, not every parent is a narcissist. Some parents just, quite frankly, are trying to figure out the lives for themselves, and they're doing the best they can. And I don't think they're malicious. But the thing with traumatic experiences, specifically a deep wounded trauma, is that I use the analogy of a splinter. where it's like having a splinter on your foot. You know it's there every time
Mm-hmm.
you take the step, you feel it. But until you sit down and, you know, peel it away and pull it out, it's going to constantly have an impact on your life, no matter how minor. But the funny part is, once you find it, and once you address it's there, and most importantly, once you pull it out, it loses its impact on you.
Right. It doesn't have power over you. You can neutralize it.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's not like like a lot of people ask me growing up in my childhood, like, how did you get over it? It's like, it's not that I got over it. I accepted it happened. Like, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, like, am I resentful that I'm never going to have the family I want? Well, I was, but it hasn't affected me in a negative way later on in life. It's given me the sense of independence. It's given me the ability to move from Ottawa to Los Angeles to Chile to back to Los Angeles again. Like, I know very few people that have that level of ambition. And that's a direct result of my circumstance. No matter if it was negative or positive, it's something that's made me what I am. And I've accepted it.
There's
That's
polarity
the
to every
difference.
issue. We can look at it in a positive or a negative way, or, you know, there's, and some of the things, like, for example, this guy that I said was a nice guy, it worked for him at work. You know what I mean? He had a great job and a lot of people liked him, but in relationships, it didn't work for him. It was over the top. It was way over the top. So I think it's one of those things. It's so intricate. That's why I like people to lead with their stories, because I feel like their interpretation, finding that out initially, really helps. Because when people start to talk, sometimes if they don't write that out first, sometimes they can go all over the place. And
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's some people that don't know how to write down. Like, I constantly tell people, especially on my Discord, I'll sometimes jump on, I say, write that down, and 3 weeks later, they'll repeat the same thing again. I had a revelation today. I realized that my childhood was a result of this. I'm like, we talked about this 3 weeks ago. It's just,
it gives it
and
gives it nice order when they write it out in story form, and then it goes, this is your interpretation. You can't run from it, right? These are your words. So you got everything out.
Well, there's two factors there. The first is that when you write things out, you're using a different part of your brain, which will help you memorize it. But the second thing is, if you're specifically trying to tackle a traumatic event, your brain has been conditioned to block that event because it's a painful memory. So it's very easy for me to, let's say, mention the fact I grew up in a household that was abusive emotionally, and, you know, a week later be like, oh, it was fine. I was just having a weak moment. Like, there's a reason for that. Your brain wants to keep you safe. At the same time, you're just going to keep re-triggering it until you address it.
Well, yeah, there's gonna be a trigger, or there's gonna be a boiling point where you let things go, and then it comes out, right? I mean, I suppose that's part of it. But people don't realize how much an individual can be triggered from a traumatic event in their past. I mean, I had a client before, they were married 9 years, and they were on their second kid, and the wife, this is really interesting, and he's like, I love my wife, man. We have a great relationship. I'm still attracted to her. There was none of that, we don't get along, we don't sleep together. There was none of that. But her issue was his mother, who he was close with, he was actually from Argentina or Chile. I think it was Argentina. And his mother and him were very close, and his mother lived nearby. This was in the States, and they were close. And he's like, my mother can, be like a mom, but she's not a bad woman in any way. And this woman, his wife, absolutely started just creating like falsehood narratives about his mom, and the mom wasn't allowed to kiss the kids or give gifts. It was it was just bizarre to him. And she created this story where the kids couldn't see the mom. Well, come to find out, we're going through this, and he's like, what the fuck, man? Like, I don't understand this. I go, this sounds ridiculous to me too. I said, well, what's her relationship like with her mom? Oh, horrible. She actually really disrespectful to her mom. I'm like, oh, well, that's it. But he didn't see any of that. He was like, oh, really? And he goes, something happened to her when she's young. She didn't really talk about it, where her mom left her at home with someone that was like a family friend. I think something happened, but she doesn't want to. And I was like, well, that's what it is. Your relationship with your mom's a threat. She looks at moms negatively, and as we got deeper into it, they couldn't repair the relationship. I mean, because it was going to be his mom or her. and she wasn't going to allow the grandkids to see him, and there was no reason for it. She just, but my point is, he's like, I kind of noticed when we first started dating that she was a little bit negative with my mom, and she'd create shit, but it didn't really get to the full level till they had kids. So he didn't see it. You know what I mean? He didn't see it till 9 years later, and then he's like, "What's going on here?" And they have 2 kids under 3. It's like,
yeah. I wouldn't say that he didn't see it. He refused to acknowledge it was there. He probably saw the initial indications of it. Like, we all have these subtle signs. Like, and I'm not to overgeneralize red flags. Like, the problem, especially in American society, is that you throw out a term red flag and people think it's a deal breaker, done. Everyone has red flags. Doesn't matter how perfect you are. But there's an element of whether or not you're working to address said red flags. If I have an anger management problem, am I going to anger management classes? Am I seeing a psychologist? Am I addressing these underlying issues? Again, you're allowed to complain, but you have to come up with a solution. The element is that a lot of these people, specifically, I don't want to call out California. Like, I know I was joking. California.
I'm from California, so go ahead. I'm from the Bay Area, so.
Yeah. But like, a lot of my clients come up for the amount of entitlement coming out of that in both directions, like both from the dumpy and the dumper. Like, that's a societally integrated belief structure where it's not what I did, it's what they did that you need to pay attention to. And both sides are screaming this, saying, "Oh, I broke up with you because you didn't do A, B, C, D." And it's like, "Oh, well, you didn't give me a chance because of 1, 2, 3, and we could have made this work." And instead of taking a step back and going to no contact, and while we're on that topic, no contact, I constantly have to reinforce, is about getting your mental stability back.
I agree.
Has nothing to do with getting an ex back. Whether or not that ex comes back or not has everything to do with how you recover and how they recover. Too many coaches out there put this emphasis on no contact being a tool to manipulate someone getting back, or at the very least, not maybe manipulate, but to encourage them to reach out at a certain point.
I agree.
There's an element here where you have to just say, it's not about that, and you need to let go of that.
I agree with you, but I find coaching certain individuals that we need to come to a point where they find that out for themselves, if that makes sense. So by asking the right questions or going through, why are you chasing this person, or unpacking some of the things that they've done, or even figuring out, I don't think this relationship's all your fault. So like, they need more reasons to go into no contact. I find that if I just, and I'm not one, you probably not have watched it. I'm not one to go, "Hey man, if you do this and this and this, you'll get your ex back." I never do that. And I don't do the no contact would just get your ex back. But individual situations are different, right? So, but you definitely want to get to a place where, yeah, that's all it is that you're going to move forward. But they need to find that out for themselves. And sometimes that takes a little bit of unpacking of what happened in the relationship before they can let go of, like, I just want them back. They really have to talk. They really have to talk about it first. Like, if you just came straight up and you're like, "Look, that's your first statement," even though that's the best advice you could give, right? In a lot of these stories or different things, not all of them, some of them are different. You can't just say that. It has to be packaged in a way where it's their idea too, and we unpacked it together. Because sometimes people will go, "I don't know if I want to do no contact because I want to leave the door open." Okay, so why do you want to leave the door open though? Let's just be honest about it. You gotta go through those nooks and crannies and not just go, "No, you can't do that," because then it becomes kind of like, you're telling me I can't. So then the resistance persists, right? That's what I find.
Well, what I usually tell people is, you will know when you're ready to break no contact, whether that's the form of closure for you or whether or not that's you attempting to rekindle a relationship. And what people usually ask me is, how do I know when I'm ready? My response is, when you don't have to ask me. This is the element of, having that good balance. Like, I have people like 15 times a day in some cases messaging me, "I'm ready to reach out." I'm like, "No, you're not."
Well, going back to your anxious thing, right? I don't use the word anxious, but I tell people, if you got butterflies, or you're worried about dialing, or you're already thinking like, or you're romanticizing about the perfect response. Like, a lot of times I'll say, "Okay, let's just unpack this. If you do contact them, what's your real intention? What's the best case scenario? Well, I actually just wanted to say happy birthday. Let's be honest. You didn't want to say happy birthday. You're hoping they come back to you. Am I correct? Yeah. So what if when you say happy birthday, worst case scenario, they don't even respond? Oh, yeah. Well, I'm saying, like, just be aware of the consequences. Now you're back at ground zero and you start all over again. Can you handle that? What you want to do is, when you do talk again, the way you first talk to someone is no expectations. Kind of just like if you wanted to get lunch or something, or you don't, it's fine. If you talk to an ex down the road, I've been in this situation before, and you just feel like, oh yeah, there's no ulterior motive here. It's like, how you doing? Oh, you're doing well? Okay, good. You don't put a lot of weight into it any longer. If you have any weight into it and you check your intentions, your honest intentions, and you go, yeah, I am honestly hoping that they kind of do get back with me, then don't call. Don't text.
Yeah, well, most people, when they reach that climax as well, like where they're at peace with what happened and they've learned the lessons and they've incorporated, well, this is why I was attracted to this kind of person, which I usually find when you sit down with people and you say, well, why were you attracted to this person to begin with? And I'd say, I'm overgeneralizing here, 80% have to do with childhood, whether it was something familiar or something that was traumatizing. And then like maybe 20% is they're in a manipulative or abusive relationship, or someone's pulling the strings in the background. Those elements are, as soon as people realize the why was I attracted to this person? Why did I stay longer than I should have? Why did I lose my sense of self-respect being with this one particular person? That's a deep psychological practice that once you come to peace with it, the need to reach out, unless, this person was a really deep piece of shit and you just want to get it off your chest and say, this is for my closure, not yours. That element is good, in my opinion. But what I'm finding, and I don't mean to generalize, I didn't mean to generalize with you with some of the other coaches I've seen online, but what I've noticed on YouTube is this emphasis of this is a process. It's almost like a flow chart. And this is how the proper steps to get an ex back. And it's like, you can't predict that. Like even someone like, Bill Gates has issues with his wife and he's a highly educated person. Like it's human to have some kind of conflict, and you can't guarantee or force someone to love you. And that's one of the things that a lot of people struggle with, especially people who have grown up, ironically, in a secure attachment style household, because they've grown up with this concept of work hard, and as long as you're honest and consistent, things will work out for you.
Yeah. Nope. They actually, it's funny because people that are high achievers or highly successful, I found, they check a lot of boxes in their life. They have a lot of money. They go to the gym. They have friends. They have this, and they get in a breakup, and they're like, "You broke up with me?" Like, do you know who I? Like, they're just shocked. They really have trouble with it, and sometimes I have to get to the point, and they'll keep making the case, man, I got this, I got that. I just don't get it. And the person told him, I broke up with you because of this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, if you're that great, you should be able to find someone of equal or higher value, right? And then they go, it's like, but there are people like that. Or like you said, they could have grown up really well and never witnessed a dysfunctional relationship, or someone that acts a certain way. A client recently that I just had that's in his mid-20s, he's like, no, my parents were really good together, this and that. And he says, and then when we got really deep on it, he was like, one of the things that's really bothering me is I loved her. Like, I really loved her. I was really in love with her. And so his definition of how deep the love was in the way his parents were, you don't break up. My parents never broke up. Like, that's not what you do. So he couldn't get past that. Like, he can't get the idea that, well, for her definition of what love was, and she wasn't ready and these kinds of things, and it really, really got a hold on him. Because he said his parents stayed together, even though he's like, my dad kind of had a girlfriend my mom knew about, but it was cool. And I don't have any issues with my parents at all, this, that, and the other. And so he just figured that people just stay together. They just stay together.
I don't know if you run into this, but I run into this a fair bit. Have you ever heard of the concept that men and women use different rationale systems?
What do you mean by that? You mean emotional versus reasonable?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So usually when I'm dealing with people that have been through a traumatic breakup, I'm usually finding that women want to talk more about how the relationship made them feel. Like, he made me feel like a piece of shit, or she made me feel like a piece of shit. And I'm just trying my best to get past this trauma and to digest everything that happened. Versus most men I deal with, where they'll say, I don't know what happened. Why did she leave me? It's a completely different dynamic, completely different structure. But
because they're looking for the reason, right? But sometimes, you know what's funny about that is I'm like, she just wrote right here the reason. That's what's good about writing her story. Because I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that she said that she's not in love with you anymore, and she's sorry, but she's just no longer attracted in the same way. Well, that can't be it, man. It's like, wait a minute. Do you not trust her or believe her? That, like, when she's saying that? So I'm saying, like, why is that not enough for your reason? Because it hurts? Or well, no, it's got to be more than that. Okay, well, but like you said, the guys will hang on that more when they don't like the answer sometimes too, right? And it's like...
Well, there's the other element too, and that's the other element is women don't know why they feel the way they feel. They just know they feel it. So if I lose my attraction to you, there's probably an underlying reason why that is, and I can throw a guess to what that is, but more than likely that guess that I'm throwing is just projected insecurity. If I say something, and I dealt with this in my last breakup, where, I don't know if you know this, but the girl I dated last year, the dismissive avoidant, is actually a relationship coach too, so that was an interesting dynamic. But
while you were together,
I asked her, yeah.
the one that's the covert narcissist is a relationship coach.
No, the dismissive avoidant. It's a different one altogether.
Okay, I'm following you.
Yeah. But it was just a coincidence that we met, and when I met her, I had my YouTube channel, although I wasn't coaching at the time. It was just a small coincidence. But either way, I asked her, I want a debrief. I want every reason why we broke up. And to her credit, she came up with a list like a typical dismissive avoidant does. And one of these things were you lack ambition, you're trying to force love, you're trying to essentially create a foundation that I don't find. We have different value systems. And I looked at all these, and initially I internalized those really deeply, being anxious the way I was right after the breakup. And it took about 6 months where I went back to the list and I said, wait a minute. Everything that she's listed here, I don't have these flaws. And what I realized was what I was dealing with her projected insecurity. When she's saying, I lack ambition. Well, with all due respect, I moved to a different country and I've developed a career, and I have a much more broader career than you do, at least in comparison. What you're actually saying is, I'm afraid that I'm going to become stagnant if we stay together, which is a fair assessment. But at the time, she was projecting that in a certain way. And that kind of leads me to my next point, which is there's 3 types of people that we deal with in our day-to-day lives, or 3 types of friends or social circles. The first that we socialize with, that we do activities with, so these are people that you can work out with, play soccer with, play video games with, etc. There's the type of people that essentially... you vent to, so I call this person just to vent out my frustration, and they're there for support. And then there's a third type that can actually give you constructive feedback, and we're all guilty of this. We're all guilty of projecting insecurities and projecting analysis, but it's that third category, that core group friend that you can go to and say, this is what I'm feeling, and they will look at the situation and say, this is what I believe you're dealing with. Like, it's a core friend group that I find most people lack. But the problem is, most people, when they're giving us feedback, are doing nothing more than projecting their own insecurities onto us. So we have to be incredibly cautious when we're dealing with criticism. Yeah. Not that we're not receptive of it, but we have to be aware that we're also dealing with an imperfect human being.
Yeah, I've talked about this before, that, years ago, I'd hear subconscious or I'd hear projection. I'd be like, oh, yeah, I've heard that word. I didn't really know what it meant. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really know what subconscious mind meant. And this is not, you weren't talking about subconscious mind. I'm just giving you and the same with projection. A friend of mine used to go, oh, that's projecting. And I'd just be like, yeah, okay. I didn't really know what it meant. But when I'm dealing with people and they get, well, my friend told me this about my relationship, and I'm like, well, is she in a bad relationship? Yeah, she's in a horrible relationship. I'm like, well, she's just projecting what's happening in her relationship. And I think that once you start to realize that, it's really interesting when you talk to people on various levels how much we all do it. I actually catch myself doing it. I catch myself. It's not like you can just go like, I'm never going to project again, right? It's like,
well, like the whole concept, like even growing up in a narcissistic household, like initially when I first started my channel, like I used to see narcissism in everything, and then I had to stop and say, not everyone.
Confirmation bias.
Exactly. Like even I'm reading some of the comments here, like MC is saying, Clutch is saying that women don't know how they feel. That's not what I said. I said there are times they don't know how, that they don't understand how they truly feel. Sometimes they do, but there's an element of, look, we're all human, and you can come to myself or Mac. The whole concept is go to someone, talk to someone, get some perspective.
I think you need to go to someone that I think that I find that the people that come to me, usually you can view by YouTube if you vibe with the way I give information, the way I talk or what have you. And then when we talk, you want to have a rapport with someone, and you want to talk to someone that you, dare I say, believe in or trust in some way. And the idea of paying gives you a more serious, all right, we're going to talk about this for an hour. I've had friends come to me that are friends that are like, hey, I want to talk to you. I'm like, you know what? Not close friends. Like if it's a really close friend, I'm like, I can't do that. But I'll be like, all right, you got to pay me. And they'll be like, okay. And I'm like, because then I can wear that cap as a coach that's different than your friend. And then you won't feel like you're just taking up my time talking in circles. And you'll follow my, hey, can you write your story? Oh, well, we don't need to write my story. No, that's what I do. That's how I do it. You know what I mean? This is my format. And if you pay, then we don't have to worry about, oh, I took up your time or this or that, and we can get into it. But when it's my really good friend, it's harder. I'm biased.
Yeah.
I'm biased.
No.
I'm 100%. I'm like, she said what? You know, it's like, I'm like, and I know the girlfriend or the person. I can't have the same objective outlook. I've done it before, and I'm like, or a family member, I can't. It's just your feelings are entangled. So I think there's a lot of value when someone doesn't have that baked in. And then when you build up to like where you talk to someone for, I don't know, multiple coachings, right? And then you build a relationship based on them coming to you for this thing, then they know, hey, Mac's the person I go to for personal issues. He knows a lot about me already. I feel comfortable with him. Then I don't have to go to one of my buddies at work that might laugh at me or, just give me like, hey, man, just go meet another chick kind of thing. So then you have someone set to do that. There's a lot of value in that.
One of the only things I take from Corey Wayne, and not to say Corey Wayne's a bad guy, but one of the things that he said really resonated with me once. And what he said was, I only accept help from people living the life I want. That was a really deeply thought statement. I'm like, you know what, there's a lot of truth to be in that. Like, especially with the internet now, and with YouTube, you just need to jump on. You'll get 20 different interpretations on like what to do in this. Like hell, my ex was a dismissive avoidant, like the worst kind of attachment style to be teaching relationships, and she has a following. So it's just like, look, you're going to find a different perspective on everything, and it's important that you follow with what resonates with you. My goal when it comes to my coaching is to eventually get you to fire me, because that means I've done my job.
Yeah, you're obsolete. Yeah, the goal is to be obsolete eventually. Yeah, that's what's amazing about, you're 100% right on that one, because I remember I went to someone to talk to that was, she's like a psychic spiritual healer, but she's basically like a coach in some ways. She wasn't all over the place. Anyways, I talked to her. It was great talking to her. And she said the same thing. My job's to be obsolete at some point. That I don't want you to come to me all the time. I think that's a different approach. And what I really like, one of the solid things about YouTube and where coaching's going is there's an alternative to going to a therapist. I don't have a problem with therapists. I don't have a problem with psychologists, but there's an alternative to talk to someone that might come from a different angle that you might vibe better with. And I think that that's a good thing. But in the process, you have to sift through some things that, you know, I've had people that come to me that talk to 5 different coaches, and then they go, God, I wish I would have talked to you first, because the other person, it was very surface information, or they seemed like they were just reciting things off the internet. You know, it's like, right?
Well, there's good therapists and bad therapists.
Right.
Like when I left my narcissistic relationship with my fiance, I shit you not, I went through 17 therapists before I eventually found someone who heard my story and said, you're dealing with a narcissist. Like, it's like everything you're describing is a form of gaslighting. And the thing is, like, back then, like, this was what year? This was in 2016. Like, there was still a fundamental taboo of talking about psychosis or psychopathy in people, and even more so now, because, like, you know, you have certain political figures who were the heads of government, you guys can fill in the gaps, who clearly have a personality disorder, and people are quick to jump, like the typical flying monkeys that they are, and say, no, that's not the way it is, and people want to justify their position so badly, to say, this is my view on the world, and this is the only view that is supposed to exist. And what usually breaks that down is severe trauma, like a breakup, for example. Oh shit, maybe I don't have everything figured out. If I was so wrong about this relationship, what else was I wrong about? And all of a sudden it opens up a can of worms where, you know, if you deal with it correctly and you can push it in the right direction, you can get a lot of good from a breakup. A breakup isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Oh no, it's an opportunity. Like I said, the getting clear on what happened and why, and then getting an honest self-assessment of where you're at in your own life, because because like you said, everyone's pointing the finger about all their, oh, they weren't going to the gym, oh, they didn't make enough money, whatever, because you're, you know, you're throwing rocks, whatever. And then when you start to look at yourself and you're like, actually, if you the more problem you have with the breakup, I would say, is the more problem you have the more conflict you have in your own life. People that I've known that had a lot of things going for them, let's say they have a good career, a good social life, they go to, you know, they exercise regularly. You don't even need to go to the gym, you just exercise, things like that. They tend to get out of breakups much quicker, not because they can just get someone else, because they have other outlets that they're happy with. And the people that have the most trouble are, all those other areas are lacking, and the one good thing that they had was that they could lean on their girlfriend or boyfriend. And then when that falls, then the reality hits. And that's actually a good thing, because you can...
It is a good thing, and... No, go ahead.
It's a good thing in the sense that now that you're at ground zero, you can really take a look. You don't have that crutch anymore where you're like, oh, you know, everything else sucks, but I still have my girlfriend or this or that. And that's part of the reason why the person might have found you less attractive. Not always, but that's part of the reason, is that you got content or you were unhappy. I mean, one of the biggest things that people overlook is just being unhappy with their job. Just being unhappy with the job is, and you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be about money. It just could be like, I hate my job. You know, it's like, that's going to bleed over in your relationship.
Or more particularly, I hate the people I work with.
Yeah.
That's usually the big one.
Yeah, that's big, man. It's like you look at jobs that you don't like, and I've had them before and whatnot, and you just got to think, at some point, I'm going to move to something else. And some people just stay. I remember this one guy came on the live stream one time, and he goes, man, I just broke up with her. She was a kindergarten teacher and a yoga instructor on the side, man. She was fucking perfect. And I'm like, what do you do? And he's like, what? I'm like, well, what do you do? Like, what kind of job do you have? Oh man, I forgot what he said he was, but he's like, and I'm like, are you happy with it? And he goes, it's all right, man. It pays the bills. I'm like, well, that's you're discussing two jobs that she's probably extremely proud and privileged to do, and that even though they're not money jobs, you obviously hold them in a light that's, you know, prestigious for a woman, caring, kind, those kinds of things. And then you're mentioning your own job being like, oh yeah, well, it pays me well. I'm like, that's a problem. You're probably not on equal happiness levels, right? A part of you is probably like, oh, she's a yoga instructor, but I would never do yoga. You know what I mean?
I don't know if you've ever listened to Jordan Peterson's lecture on money and happiness.
I've listened to a lot of his
actually,
lectures, but I don't know about that one. Go ahead.
Well, he did some psychological studies, or he referenced psychological studies that talked about, how much money does a person need to truly be happy? And one of the conclusions he came to is like, money doesn't equal happiness, but you do need money to be happy. Like, everyone has to have a fundamental level of security when it comes to their livelihood. And the conclusion of the study was that the gap, as far as the amount of happiness being affected by your income, is only about $60,000 US dollars. Anything more than that, you're not going to gain any more happiness from your income. So all these people that are like striving to be millionaires, like there's a big push to entrepreneurship, a big push to being a millionaire. Like, look at reality TV, like how many reality TV shows exist that portray billionaires as being common people, which, quite frankly, they're not. It takes a very special kind of person to get up there. But the element is that, look, your career is only one part of your life. It's a necessary part, don't get me wrong. But if your only foundation, the only thing that you can bring to the table is the fact that you make money, good luck keeping any relationship, even a superficial one, for very long.
What's funny about that is that I did a topic-based thing. I think Rob might remember this, where I said, have you ever thought about this? This might sound like a shallow concept, but if you've met a rich guy before that's very into materialistic items, right? So, which is very common, right? So someone that's rich, and I'm just going to say a man in general, not a woman necessarily. That's not to say that a woman couldn't be rich too. But materialistic items, say like a Ferrari, very flashy, right? Very expensive, designer clothes, Louis Vuitton bags. What kind of woman do they usually end up with?
That's a good question.
You know what I mean? It's
I'm friends with a couple of millionaires, and the richest person I know is actually a woman. So I'm trying to
No. I'm not saying that they're just rich. I'm saying because there's some people that are rich that are not materialistic or into flashy items like a Ferrari or Louis Vuitton bag or Versace shades.
Look at Bill Gates. He wears sweaters that are like $20, and like sure he has a driver that drives him around, but the reason he does that is he spends his time reading. He's just like, I don't want to waste my time. So rather than drive himself everywhere, he hires someone to do it so he can read, so he can educate himself.
But my thing is that you're like these kind of cars and stuff. You're into sacrificing. It's obviously very expensive, but they're very high maintenance. And so a lot of times, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Well, it's also very short term. For some reason, I don't know why, YouTube has decided to throw at me fancy European cars. Like, I don't know why, but like I'm getting all these YouTube recommendations to talk about, Lamborghinis and Porsches. Like, I'm pretty sure that Google knows something that I don't in my immediate future. But the element is that all of them say the same thing when it comes to fancy things. Like, even like things like Lamborghini, you're only supposed to keep them for about 2 or 3 years. And then you upgrade or you move on to the next.
So I'm saying those kind of guys look at their relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And imagine spending $500,000 on a car, knowing fully well that you're going to get rid of it in 2 or 3 years.
I can't imagine that. Yeah, that's one of those things. I can't imagine it. I can't fathom it. That's a house.
Well, like one of the things that my ex used to do is she was a big visual person, so she had like one of those visual boards, where you throw in your goals. She had a Lamborghini Heritage listed on there. I started laughing and I said, "You honestly want a Lamborghini? You want to spend $600,000 on a car that you're only going to keep for 3 years?" And she said, "Well, what are you talking about? I'm going to keep it forever." And I'm like, "You clearly have never driven a supercar. Those motors don't last very long." Like, it's a case where those cars are meant to show class, like social class. That's the main reason that people buy them. It's the same reason why women will walk into Louis Vuitton and spend $20,000 on a handbag. It's all about perception and how they're interpreted. Right. And it's like you sit down and look at the actual materials. Like, part of my other career is I look at life cycle assessments, and I look at the materials used in a bag. I'm like, that bag's using like $80 worth of material at most, including labor, and it's selling for $20,000.
That's amazing, the markups on those things, just for a brand name. That's amazing. I have no idea what it costs, but Yeah, that kind of thing's just, yeah, that's 20 grand for a bag. Jesus.
That's like that's like 3 months salary for me. I'm like, yeah, let's just throw it away, no problem. But this is what we run into Cali. This, like, knock on wood. I
haven't been back. I haven't lived in the Bay Area for, it's been almost 11 years now. But when I go back to visit, it's crowded. There's a lot of traffic. There was always traffic, but there's more. And now, living where I live now, near a beach in a beautiful area, like the cement, the parking lots, the strip malls, places like Walmart or Costco, it's just, it's just.
Well, there's a lot to be said. Like, you've chosen a lifestyle, and good for you. Like, if that's what you're content with and that's what you're happy with, that's great. That's the main aspect. But people that are attracted to Cali, like, people often say, oh, you don't want to date someone who's from California. No, I want to date someone who's from California. What I want to avoid is the people that are attracted to coming to California, because that's the mindset you want to avoid. And of course,
I think Southern Cal is different than the Bay Area. I think they're different.
A little bit. Like, there is an assessment on, like, class and how much money one has, but, like, in LA, it's a completely different beast. Like, it's constant. Like, I used to live in Santa Monica, and, like, just going to the pier, like, you'd see all these people just driving around in Lamborghinis or wearing shorts that I knew were into the thousands of dollars, and it was all about, look how much I'm worth. Look how successful I am.
What's funny about that is when I lived in San Diego for almost 4 years, I suppose, and I lived in Pacific Beach, and it was new to me. And it was a beach community and all this stuff. It was very surfer, skater. I mean, there was an element where it ran into La Jolla and it was expensive, but it wasn't like what you just said. But it was the first time I moved out of my hometown, and I just, like, looking back, like I've talked about this before, like, it's just amazing that different areas have such subcultures. Like you're like, oh shit, there's really dudes that say gnarly. Like I thought that was just the Ninja Turtles. Like someone said gnarly. Like, I was hanging out, I was like, gnarly dudes. Like, we went and charged the waves yesterday. It was crazy, dude. And I was like, whoa. This is what people think about California, but, like, the Bay Area, no one talks like that. No one wears flip flops. Well, now they do wear flip flops, but, like, it was like two different places to me. It was just funny. And then, like, when I first heard that, I was like, what? Like, people really talk about that?
There's different vibes. Like, that community changes you. Like, I remember, like, I moved from Ottawa, Canada. So I moved from a city that's minus 40 in the winter.
I know some people from Ottawa that live in Phuket. They live in my hometown. There's two of them. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, awesome town. I love Ottawa. Never moved back there, but awesome place. I'm too used to the Cali weather at this point.
The weather's great there. San Diego's beautiful. Yeah. Gorgeous.
Exactly. I would love to live in San Diego one day. Like, I love going there. But the new job that I have is in Orange County, so there I have to stay. But the element is that, like, making that transition. Like, imagine, like, small Canadian city to, like, a big LA industrial complex, which everyone cares about how they come off. Like, when I moved there, I lost 50 pounds. Like, it was just, there was such emphasis on looks. Like, and I don't
environment counts, dude. Environment is underrated. How much it affects. Like, you hear, like, oh, you're a product of your environment. People brush it off. They're like, no. Oh, you're the average of your 5 closest friends. People brush it off. It's so true. It's cliche, but it's so true. It's so true. I don't think there's any way to curtail that. You know what I mean? That's the thing that's ideal, I think, is to seek environments that you want to live in. Mm-hmm. I don't think you have a choice where you're born, right? Like, you don't but to seek environments that, like, I've always loved the beach. I like warm weather. I like Thai food. I like someone's like, oh yeah, everyone likes that. Well, you want to live where people go on vacation. Has always been my motto too. Like, if you can do it, it does help with your mood. Weather helps. Living where you want to live helps. If you like the woods, it's better. I think that one of the things that when I go back home is when I see suburbs. I'm like, oh God, like chain restaurants and like
I
no
I can
character.
imagine the difference between being in Thailand and going to a U.S. suburb. Like, I ended up going to Manila. That was about 3 years ago for work. And I remember my hotel was about 3 miles from the client site. It literally took us 2 hours to drive 3 miles.
Oh,
The traffic is so bad. And I started laughing when I got to LA because everyone was like, "Oh, you don't know what traffic is until you went to LA." I'm like, "Bitch, I went to Manila. Like, you have no idea what
that's
bad
what
traffic
Bangkok's
is."
like. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what Bangkok. Phuket's not like that, but Bangkok's like that for sure. I don't like traffic. But I guess everything's changing now that people are getting Teslas and the car just drives itself. When I was in the Bay Area, a friend of a friend had a Tesla, and that was the first time I experienced where someone just went full autopilot, and I was like, "Whoa, dude!" I was like, I know what you know what I mean. Like, I'm like, "Wow, you don't have to do nothing." He's like, "Nope."
I want to incorporate that into my life, but the one scene I constantly remember is the scene from iRobot when Will Smith is on the autopilot and all of a sudden he starts getting attacked by these robots. So I'm just like, I want to maintain a level of control because the reason he survived that scene was because he was driving manual. Had he been driving automatic, he would have been killed.
Yeah, I guess so. But for me, if you're in traffic, it would be nice because the stop and go of concentrating while you're stopping and going, to be an autopilot in traffic would be nice. That you could be like, all right, I'm not worried if I'm in a bumper to bumper traffic.
That's true. There's an element of thankfully I have an automatic car now, but in Ottawa I had a standard transmission. I wouldn't be able to last a couple weeks in LA.
So would you recommend
that kind of stop and go? Would
you recommend people visiting Chile?
Right now, it's kind of closed to the outside world unless you have Chilean citizenship. But I do recommend it. A lot of Canadians and a lot of Americans live here. Like, the cost of living is lower. Like, there are communities like mine. I live in a community called Las Condes, which literally means the condos. And here, it's literally, upper, I would say middle class U.S. Like, it's a nice little community. Like, there are certain areas you want to avoid, and you do have to speak the language to come here. But overall, just an amazing place. Nice people, different culture than the U.S. I will say so, but overall, just a great experience.
What's the big city there again? The big
Santiago.
I had one client that was a woman that was from there. Really nice lady. She was from there, and I had a couple that were from Argentina. Argentina has always been on my list. Whenever I talk to world travelers, like people that've been around, they always put Argentina in like the top 5. Is it nicer than Chile or is it similar?
It's bigger.
It's just bigger.
A lot more to see.
Okay.
City-wise, like if you compare Buenos Aires, Buenos Aires is a little bit bigger. Santiago, I would say, is a little more developed. Like, personally speaking, when people talk about tourism, I usually recommend going to Uruguay, out of all places, because like it's. There's a city in Uruguay called Punta Este, which literally means point eastern. And you go there, and it's like walking through Miami. Like, you can't even tell the difference. Like, signs are all in English. Everyone speaks English there. But you walk through there, and I'm like, wow, this is Miami. It's really weird.
Is Uruguay or is it Paraguay that had the really popular president that was
Uruguay? I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, the guy lived in an average house. He was kind of older.
Yeah.
The people just loved him. And he was an older man. I saw him in like an interview one time, and I just thought that was really cool. Like, he lived in it didn't look like the president's house, and they just said that he was adored by the people. And
Well, the media exaggerates everything, but like he's not a bad guy. Like, I don't think he's a bad guy, but overall, like Uruguay is. If for a tourist, like if you had a choice, I would recommend going to Punta Este because like it's so nice out there, and like I mentioned, you go there and you walk through town and you're like, wow, this looks exactly like Miami. It's really weird. Like, in fact, I'm trying to send you a photo of it right now, just to give you some idea. I'm not sure if you can share it with your audience, but
I would much rather go to South. I've been invited to go to Europe from friends. I'd much rather go to South America. Much
Europe's
better.
expensive.
Yeah, exactly my point. Yeah, that's a friend, because I got a couple really good friends that are from the UK or from England, and they're like, "Oh, mate, I got a place, you can stay there," and I'm like, "It's just not high on my list. I'm sorry." Like if I was, I would rather go to South America, like Brazil, Argentina, those countries, or Polynesia even. Like those would be on my list over.
I would say out of all the Latin countries, Uruguay is probably the most English friendly.
Oh wow.
It is small though. That's the downside to it. So if you can learn Spanish, you can go anywhere and you'll be fine. But otherwise, for the most part,
a little bit,
I think.
but not that much. I should speak more, being from California. That's our,
You would think, right?
well, it's it's ironic. Yeah, no, and my mother's half Spanish, so my grandmother spoke full Spanish. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, no, we didn't.
That must have been interesting growing up.
No, my mother never learned the language. Her father was French too, from France, and so both them spoke those languages, and just she never learned it. So.
Oh, I see. But yeah, no. Overall, I think that when it comes to relationships, just going back to the topic, when it comes to relationships, look, each one of us are dealing with a crock of shit, especially when we go through a breakup, specifically when the breakup's unjustified, which a lot of times it is. Sometimes it is justified, but a lot of times it's something out of our control. Either we triggered someone in the wrong way, or we are in misalignment on whether or not we're in the honeymoon phase or the power struggle phase or the dating phase. Or there's an element such as, a third party getting involved, which is much more common than people think. Not to trigger people's fear factor whenever we're talking about relationships.
No, I know what you mean by triggering it too. It's like, sometimes you don't want to know, but the idea that someone else is involved in it. Sometimes it's not necessarily just cheating. It's someone that's in someone's ear.
Well, that's usually the most of it. Like what I usually find, and I'm probably overgeneralizing, but I find that particularly mothers have a strong influence in who their daughters date.
It seems like the parent thing is very cultural, right? The India thing comes up again and again, where my parents didn't accept, who I was with. So culturally, it tends to be more of a problem in different areas with the parents. But yeah, moms can. And the funny thing is, when someone starts complaining about a mom, or what happens a lot of times with people in their 20s in college, and I'll call this, and they'll be like, exactly. They'll be like, oh man, she's been doing this. I'm like, well, does she live with a bunch of single friends? Yes. How'd you know? And I'm like, did she start to change when she moved in with her single? Yes. I hate her friend. And I'm like, well, people want you to feel like they do. People want you to, you know what I mean? It's like they're not gonna tell her to cheat on you, but they're gonna want her to go out and be a part of the fun. And if her friends come back with some catch that she thinks is attractive, then she's gonna start second guessing things, and you're gonna start sensing that and getting insecure. And it's like that's the beginning of the end a lot of times. The amount of those relationships in their 20s where a lot of times the girl just goes, I just want to be single right now. I'm like, that. Unfortunately, I think in the 21st century, there's not going to be a lot of people that are married for 60 years. I just don't.
I don't think so either.
I just don't think that. And someone's like, oh, that's fortunate for breakup coaching. I don't mean it that way. I just think it's a reality. I just think that if you're in your 20s, that's probably not going to be your last boyfriend or girlfriend. It's just not going to be that way. The religion's not there to support it. People are way more into upgrading everything in their life, optimizing everything in their life, and social media and whatnot produces I could do better, or I'm not enough. And so people just don't stick it out. They're not going to stick it out like they used to. And that's the way it is.
Well, the metaphor I usually use, I'm not sure if you ever read the play The Death of a Salesman at all.
No, I don't know that one.
It's a play that talks about the concept of the American dream. And I hope I'm not spoiling the play for anyone. If you haven't seen the play, you probably never will. But the premise of the story is that there's this father, and I believe it's in the 1950s, or takes place in the 1950s, and he's been laid off. and he's trying to figure out a way to essentially take care of his family. And he's a massive alcoholic, and he has 2 sons. And both the sons are actively trying to find work, and they're trying to make ends meet. And the premise is, by the end of the story, the father decides he's going to kill himself for insurance money, because this is before insurance had...
Shouldn't laugh, okay.
Yeah. And he kills himself. And the conclusion is that the 2 brothers have a disagreement. One of them says, well, father did this and he succeeded, and he was able to give us all the money that we needed to survive, so he's a success. And the other brother's saying, what are you talking about? Like, this literally took his life. The American dream is a lie. Mm-hmm. And of course, it becomes a concept of, what narrative do you want to follow? Do you want to follow this narrative that as long as I work hard and I'm consistent, I'm going to succeed? Well, you might, but it might also come crumbling down. And this is where a lot of people struggle, especially when it comes to things like...
What if I countered with American Beauty, Kevin Spacey?
Sure. if that's who you want to reference, go right ahead. I'm not sure that Kevin Spacey's in the best limelight right now.
No. I'm not. I'm just going purely on the movie. Yeah, it's funny because a friend back home, I said something about a Michael Jackson song. My friend was like, I don't even listen to him anymore. I was like, okay. It's like, separate the music from the. It's hard, right? Because that's how people look at it. But that was a movie that American Beauty was kind of in that element, right?
Yeah, well, that and blackmailing your boss for $50,000, which I'm sure is the American dream of every single person out there. But the element is, what narrative you want to tell yourself?
Do you want to
tell? Yeah. Do you want to sell yourself a narrative that I'm just going to go for the next best thing? Where's your security? Like, do you not want someone there who you can rely on? Where when you do hit these road bumps, and guess what, you will. No matter how good you are. When you hit these road bumps, do you want to be with someone who's going to stick it through with you and support you when you need it, and vice versa? Or do you want a nice trophy to hang on your arm, like those Lamborghinis that only last 2 or 3 years?
Marriage is the ultimate love pension.
and you got to be careful, because the exit clause is half.
Well, in certain areas, right? Not where I live, but yeah. But yeah, that's the thing. Everyone thinks it's the same all over the world. It's not true. So it's like you could change the rules if you move. because so many people are like, oh man, like I've met guys over here that are from LA, and they're here for a visit and this and that, and they're like, I'm like, oh, you're retired right now? I go, you should move out here. Like, I'm married. I'm like, oh, why wouldn't you want to bring your wife with you or something? Oh, I wouldn't want to do that. And I could never get divorced because I'm going to lose, it seems like you're stuck, the consequence is so high if I want to get a divorce. It's tough. It's tough.
Well, it is a big commitment. It is a huge commitment, especially if
you said that in such a calm voice. It is a big commitment. It's the fucking biggest commitment you could make in somewhere like California, man. I mean,
people are looking to us for stability. So let's try to keep a level of narrative of being like, oh, you have to panic.
I don't think you have to panic. I just think that and keep in mind, I haven't been married, so I'm one of those that I haven't been married at my age, but. It's different for everyone. I think that, at this point, the amount of people that I've talked to that they've been married for 20 plus years and they get a divorce and they were like, it wasn't bad at all because we were done 2 or 3 years ago. We're still friends, this, that, and the other. But then their first relationship out of the marriage, they're calling me up and they're like, I've never dealt with this before. Because they just had a 20-year relationship. They're thinking, oh, the next one I'm in, it's going to be like that. And then they break up with someone. They're like, "What the hell? What's going on here?"
Well, the biggest fallacy that most people deal with is they think every relationship is going to be consistent. So I exit a relationship and I say, I know everything that there is to know about a relationship. And then I meet someone completely different and I realize I know jack shit.
You get humbled.
Yeah, and then you enter a new relationship. Like the best people say, what I know is I don't know.
Yeah,
what I know is that there's still a lot to learn.
Well, that's what I tell people constantly is that you are one of a kind, individually numbered. You're unique in your interpretations and how you see the world, and you think everyone else sees it the way you see it, and that's where things get fucked up. Why do they do this to me? And then I'll say, the reason you're really upset is because you'd never do that to them, right? Yeah. Well, they do it to you.
Well, I think it speaks volume if they're willing to do something like that to you and you're not willing to do something like that to them.
And it happens, it happens a lot. It's like I would never break up over a text. It's like, do you primarily communicate through text with your partner? Yeah, all the time. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of like what people do now, but they would do it. They did it. So, you know, it's not, you're not going to be able to run away from that. It's hard to run away from, but it comes up again and again. We really think as human beings, like, everyone sees it the way I see it, right? You saw that, right? It's like,
well, what most people think is they're not capable of being evil.
I've never looked at it that way. Evil is a strong word.
Well, it's a concept of, if you look to the extremes, and again, this is where my poli sci comes out. You look like Nazi Germany, for example.
Okay.
Do you think that the entire state of Germany was an evil state, like all millions of those Germans? No, a lot of them were following orders. But
yeah, they were programmed,
Yeah, a lot of them were pushed to do things. And this is what Jordan Peterson talks about the dark self, that shadow figure in the back of your mind, the person that's capable of doing evil things, because we all have that side to us. Doesn't mean that you're going to do it, but it's a part of you. And every time that we get rejected in a very dark way, like a discard, for example, what we're actually reminded of is we're capable of doing the exact same thing. And this is where a lot of people struggle, because they'll say, I will never do something like that. Maybe not in this set of circumstances, but change the roles.
Are you associating this with Jung and the dark side too? Like having a dark side? Yeah. Partially.
Yeah. It's not about suppressing the dark side. It's not about letting it take over either. It's a part of you. It exists to keep you safe, after all. Like, the reason that we have things like evil, for example, is if I'm capable of killing another man in order to defend my family, that's a concept of evil I'd be willing to accept. Not saying I'm going to go out on the street and want to kill someone. Like, that's the opposite extreme. But we have to recognize that it's a part of us. It's the reason that we're alive today.
Capability.
And it's that part. Like, a lot of these people that talk about these relationships, these tactics, these manipulations, this way of viewing the world, especially when it comes to something like, you know, the dismissive mindset of like red or black pill. It's all about, oh, well, you just have to recover. Well, you do, but there's deeper layers than that. Maybe it has more to do with the fact that I got betrayed by someone who I trusted. What does that say about my value system? What does that say about me? I used to be a secure person. I'm probably one of the, not to toot my own horn, I'm one of the most secure people I know. And I was brought to tears by the actions of another person. What does that say? That says that I'm vulnerable. That says that maybe I don't have as much reinforcement as I think I do. That's a scary thing for people to come to terms with. The true people, the true selves anyways, understand that vulnerability and understand that aspect of your psyche, the suppressed aspect, the part, that scared little child that was abandoned as a kid, is something to incorporate into you, not to become that child. Don't be those little crybabies that whine about everything. Recognize the child is there. Recognize it was a part of you. Accept the child, but don't let the child run the park.
Well, it's a. I suppose it's a thing that's comes and goes, right?
With experience, for the most part, yeah.
Well, this has been good, Clutch. Man, an hour and 38 minutes. You got to be coming up on 4 a.m., bud.
Yeah, I got to get some sleep before I kill you.
Yeah, all right. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you stepping in. We'll be in contact, and we'll talk again for sure. I really appreciate it.
Sounds great, Mac.
All right,
Sounds great. Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Nice little spontaneous chat.
Yeah, before we leave, Clutch, may I ask you something?
Go ahead.
What are you doing? Like, what kind of your job? Because the way you talk is like you're a teacher, like that.
My job has to do with regulating. Well, it's going to be regulating the safety of medical devices that go into the human brain.
Wow.
So, not to say that I am like an engineer or anything like that. That's not what I do. But what I do is I verify the products are safe. That's the best way. That's the simplest way I can describe it.
Sounds technical.
Yeah.
It's partially technical. Also, there's three types of people I deal with in the workplace: lawyers, managers, and salespeople. Each one of them have a different hat I have to put on. So, you know, when you're dealing with lawyers, you have to be very precise. When you're dealing with engineers, you have to be very technical. Like it's all an aspect of, you have to know your audience.
I just want to make a compliment that you guys have a really great conversation. Actually, I'm really enjoying that.
Thanks, Aleph. Aleph's my video editor here, from former student of mine. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna let you go, bud. I'm gonna let you get some shut eye and enjoy your sleep. Hopefully, you get to sleep in.
I'm sure I will. Thanks for having me. We'll talk soon.
All right, bud. Talk to you.
All right. Cheers.
And back to the live stream for 2 more. No. Does anyone have any questions after that marathon? 2 more years of singlehood sounds tough. I love that Azam, Sabina, Elena P, Rob have been having their own conversation. Rob, do not mention Bitcoin one more time, please. Alice laughing because it's just like, it's like, oh man, like that was one of those things, like, don't mention it, Rob. Just don't bring it up. Oh yeah, I bought Bitcoin. It's like, okay, you're a genius for the rest of your life, Rob. Stop it. It's like, because like 3 years ago, it's just gonna haunt the rest of my life. Bitcoin results in bans in my Discord. Just saying. It's just like, oh man. No, I had a friend. God damn it. Like I said, a friend talked to me for 3 hours. Someone I trust. Someone that gave me good advice before about investing money that I didn't take. And when it was $3,000. And he just was preaching. He's like, he's going to get up to 80 grand. I was like, all right, if it gets to 10 grand. But I mean, just, oh my God. Jeez. What are you going to do with all that? Rob, so like, the thing is, it's like, you just want to keep it. You know what always like gets me is like when people make a lot of money in the stock market or Bitcoin, and they're just like, yeah, no, I don't want to cash it in. I just want to, like, don't you want to just cash it in and live like a really good life on an island somewhere or something? like Phuket where I live, but with lots of money. I bought it at $185. Stop it, Rob. Just stop. Oh, you're not going to tell us how many you have. If you bought it for $185, I hope you have about 100 of them. Jeez. $185. If everyone cashed in their Bitcoin, it would crash the price. Well, yeah, not bad. What's your account? Asking for a friend. Rob, you can spend it on your. What do you mean? What's your account? Are you asking Rob what's his account? All right, we got to get lunch. He will buy a Bentley. Like I said, Rob, just don't bring it up all the time. Because Aleph's laughing because it's like when this thing just keeps going on, I'm like, oh God. It's haunting me. It's because it's one of those things I was like, oh, I got to get it. I got to buy a few. You know, like when it was low and it was like, oh yeah. And I was telling people like, yeah, I think it's, you know, fuck.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's just like, damn, man. Like it's like, and everyone that's bought it's like, oh yeah, I knew all along. You know, it's like. I knew all along. It's, you know, it's like Bitcoin was, you know, it was headed this way, right? And it's just like, yeah, I thought. Jeez. I guess I got to switch my website to accept like 0.1% of a Bitcoin for a 1 hour session, right? That was a new grade stream, one of the best streams. Thanks, Sabina. It was long-winded, but I enjoyed talking to Clutch. He's got a lot to say, that's for sure. Well-spoken dude. All right, folks. Like I said, I'll be back on deck soon. Got to go get some lunch. Take care, folks. It's curtains.